Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Rias breaks Naruto's heart part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A young girl was floating in the darkness, all alone. The girl was no older than 15 years old, and she looked the part, though she also seemed immature. She was on the shorter side, standing at only 138 centimeters, or 4 feet 6 inches in feet and inches. She was extremely petite, only weighing close to 70 pounds, a little less than that. The girl had shorter, shoulder length at the most, white hair. She was fair-skinned, and on the side she had a small black, cat head hairpin. She wore a tight white uniform shirt, and around her waist she had a black corset around her waist. She had an extremely short, her panties were normally visible with a gentle breeze, skirt that was violet-red in color. She had long legs, for her short height, and knee-high black socks, with brown shoes, no laces. She was in the middle of a dream. She was Kaneko Tuju, and she was in the middle of a very important dream. Without a doubt the most important dream of her entire life. She might just be floating in the darkness right now, but she knew what this dream was. Her elder sister had the exact same dream, but she had ignored the dream. Ignoring the dream had been a fatal mistake, which had led to them living a hard life, and it led to them being separate. Not that Kaneko wanted anything to do with her sister anymore. She would not ignore this dream. Kaneko, or do I call you Chiron? A deep male voice called through the darkness. It was the question between her fake name and her true name. It asked her which one that she preferred to use, and honestly, she didn't like her birth name. I go by Kaneko. Kaneko answered, and her answer echoed in the infinite darkness. She didn't bother looking for the voice. If the dream was going to go by the same course of action, then. Very well, Kaneko, the voice said, and the blackness around her vanished. Suddenly she was standing on the ground in front of a temple. The land was sacred ground to any yokai race capable of using senjutsu. It was a land that no devil, angel, god, reaper, fallen angel, dragon, or non-senjutsu using yokai was allowed to enter without express permission from the sole occupant of the land. In the distance, Kaneko could see many tall mountains, the mountains much smaller than the mountain they were on now. The tip of this mountain, though, had been fallen, or the top of the mountain had been cut off. According to ancient legends, this was a mountain so tall that it reached the heavens, before it was cut down and hidden by special mist. That legend was true, because only those who knew the path could find it. The temple was Japanese in nature, and it had several buildings, one with steam coming out of the top of it. The front temple had 2 huge stone toads next to it. Each toad over 50 feet tall, and sitting in a meditative position, frozen in place until the day they were broken. There was a stone road leading towards the front of the temple. Where am I supposed to go? Kaneko asked, before she felt a hand on her shoulder. You know how to get here. Just follow your heart, and let nature guide you. The voice spoke to her, and she turned her head. She only came up to the crotch of this person. He stood at a massive height, when compared to her, of about 6 feet 3 inches in height. He was a grown man, who appeared to be in his early 20s, appeared to be, not actually. He had fair peach-colored skin, a few shades darker than her skin. He had a well-toned, muscular/lean body, with muscles as hard as steel. His face was hidden from her, the glare from the sun preventing her from making it out. Yet she could see golden blonde hair, like the sun itself, and she could see sky-blue eyes. He wore an orange jacket, a zipper down the front, and over that he had a jacket cape on with red flames at the bottom. His jacket had black stripes on the sleeves and near the bottom of the torso. He wore pure black pants, with the legs rolled up to shoe-armored sandals. Lord 7th, Kaneko said as she was frozen in awe. The man who had eaten the chakra paramecia, against his will, and gained immortality for the purpose of making sure that future sages were properly trained and did not abuse the great power of nature. The legend said that when Earth started to feel hatred for the people that lived on it, Naruto had gained immortality for the purpose of helping to heal Earth's hatred. Just call me 7th, and if you decide that you will come you may call me Master. Do you know my name, Kaneko? Lord 7th asked her, and she looked up at him with her face scrunched up. She knew his name, of course she knew it. Not even Ophis, the dragon god of infinity, would dare cross him. His name was legend. The strongest existence, and the strongest human. Naruto Uzumaki, Lord 7th, the strongest. Is it really my time to become a sage? Kaneko asked nervously. That is up for you to decide. If you pass the trials to get to Sage Mountain, then you will be welcome to train. Now go, Kaneko, Naruto said to her, and Kaneko nodded her head. Yellow eyes snapped open. Kaneko woke up, to find herself in the club room that was used as a base for her master and her peerage. She yawned, and remembered her dream as she sat up on the couch. She knew what she had to do, she had to pack up and head out right away. She would talk with Rias about this, and she was sure that Rias would give her permission to go. Of course, she had little, very little, doubt that when properly explained that Rias wouldn't let her go. This was an important moment for her. Bucho, Kaneko said, because across the room was her master, Rias Gremory of the Gremory house. The girl was 17 years old, and beautiful. She was a tall 5 feet 8 inches for a woman, and she was everything that Kaneko wanted to be when it came to her body. She had huge breasts, wide childbirthing hips. She had flawless skin, though Kaneko had that one too. Her hair was long and crimson, and her eyes were a soft blue color. She wore the same outfit as Kaneko, but with white socks instead of black. She was reading something at the moment, reports on something Kaneko didn't care about, and she had her concentration glasses on. She didn't have sight problems, she just believed the glasses helped her think better and seem smarter. "Oh, you are awake, Kaneko-chan. You seemed like you were having such a nice dream, a shame you woke up from it." Rias spoke to her kindly, with a genuine smile. Rias was always nice to her, and got her any type of snack she wanted to have. Rarely did Rias ever have to punish her for acting out, and compared to some other kings, Rias' punishments were very rare, and very light. She was not a strict master. "Yeah, shame. Bucho, can I leave school for a while?" Kaneko asked right out. She was a blunt person. "I don't have a problem with it, but why? This came out of nowhere. Do you have something important you need to do?" Rias asked, not against the idea of Kaneko leaving school. She just wanted to know why Kaneko of all people wanted to leave. The girl never showed any desires to leave her side, then again, Kaneko had no dreams or goals at all. She was a pretty blank slate. "I had a dream involving senjutsu." Kaneko slowly worked that word into the conversation. It got Rias' attention. "The same senjutsu that never mind. What about senjutsu? Are you willing to start learning your heritage? Do I need to find you a teacher? I am sure that there is somebody in the underworld I can hire to teach you." Rias offered to have Kaneko trained, no limits on what she would spend to make sure that it happened again, within reason that is. She couldn't pay an amount of money she didn't have. Kaneko learning senjutsu was important, and it was an asset to Rias, seeing as Kaneko's power was her power as well. "No, I have a teacher planned out. I need to go and meet him. There is a law preventing me from saying his name to a non-senjutsu using race though," Kaneko said, and Rias seemed to frown a little. That wasn't a lot of information. "Well then, I would love to meet him and talk with him about your situation, and what his training methods are. I will arrange for all of us to go and talk to him," Rias assured Kaneko, since she misunderstood the situation. She believed that she would have the ability to go to that place. "You can't go," Kaneko told Rias, who now really frowned. "Oh, I see. That is unfortunate, Kaneko-chan. I have to say that," Rias started to say, but Kaneko interrupted her. "I need to go. My sister didn't go, and she was overcome by senjutsu once she started to learn it by herself. This is really important, Kaneko-chan, that I go, Kaneko-chan," and trained Kaneko continued to speak, assuming that Rias was about to forbid her from going. She didn't hear Rias saying her name a few times, but she did feel it when a paper ball hit her forehead, stopping her. "I didn't say you couldn't go. You can go. Go and get stronger, but I want you to be safe. Just be sure to tell me how your training is going from time to time. We have long lives, so feel free to take a few years if you need them," Rias said with a smile on her face. Kaneko grimaced at Rias, and Rias raised an eyebrow. "You will be able to talk with me, right?" Rias asked with an amused tone. "I will not," Kaneko confirmed for her. "Is there a protective barrier preventing devil magic from entering or leaving?" Rias asked, now slightly amused by how well thought out this was. "There is a barrier around the mountain, I think. Nobody but those close to nature can sense the location of the barrier, and those close to nature can go through the barrier." "I am sorry," Kaneko told Rias, knowing the girl would be worried about her. Rias smiled briefly, before she rubbed her chin in thought. "I see. Well then. Surely there is a way to send letters, right? I mean, this teacher must have a way to contact the outside world. Ask your teacher about it when you get there. If you trust this man to teach you, I will as well." "I would love to meet him," Rias said with a nod of her head. Anyone that was going to be teaching her little kitten, she would love to meet face to face one day. "You mean it? I can go?" Kaneko asked in surprise. "Of course, if this means so much to you, what right do I have other than your master to deny you your right?" Just be safe, the journey to this man is safe, right? Rias asked, and Kaneko winced a little. Rias sighed. Okay then, be very safe and careful. Rias corrected her statement, and she got up at the same time as Kaneko. Kaneko walked towards her and hugged her, while Rias pat her on the head. Thank you, Rias-sama. Kaneko spoke, using Rias' actual name. Only one person in the peerage actually called her Rias without honorifics that denoted her high-standing class. She was not that person. You're welcome now, don't you have packing to do? Rias asked with a glint in her eye, and Kaneko nodded quickly. She did, she had a lot of packing to do. She had no clue how long she would be gone. Kaneko walked out of the clubroom, and Rias looked at the door sadly. She was going to dearly miss Kaneko while she was gone. Devil magic could not be used to take Kaneko to the Sage Mountain, that was how the legend went. It was impossible, the nature of the world rejected devils, and even fallen angels. Angels simply had no need to go to Sage Mountain, and none of the other races could sense the location of the mountain. Only those connected to nature, who had been given a dream about the mountain, could sense its location. It was not an easy place to find, and it was located on no maps in the entire world. It was impossible to find, without the knowledge of where it was, or how to get there already. The barrier prevented people from sensing what was inside of the barrier, but the barrier was created with senjutsu, so it couldn't prevent nature from being sensed from the inside of it. The barrier itself gave off a very nature-like feel to it. That was how a senjutsu user would track the Sage Mountain, by sensing the barrier itself that kept it safe. I am on my way, master, Kaneko thought, properly addressing Naruto even in her thoughts. She could sense the general direction that the place was in. Yet, she thought she was sensing something strange. Strange as in, she could sense it getting closer to her without her even doing anything. Of course, she didn't do nothing for long. Kaneko started to walk, with her oversized backpack on her back. Kaneko closed her eyes, and took in a deep breath, and as she walked she kept her eyes closed. No, it wasn't getting closer, she could just feel the path getting clearer to her. That was all. The more faith she placed in nature to guide her there, the easier it was to find. The less she trusted nature, the harder it would be to find. That was a strange barrier, but one that was very clever. Only a senjutsu user could find the place, but even more than that, it seemed to help form a bond with nature, by forcing you to trust nature. Or, it was just a coincidence, since you didn't really need a strong bond with nature to start learning senjutsu. Meow, her little familiar said, and Kaneko looked at the small white cat following her, before she banished it back to the familiar forest. She couldn't allow the risk of her familiar getting hurt. I am sorry, but I have to do this alone. Like all of those before me, Kaneko said with a serious look of raw determination. The journey was never taken in a group, always alone. Only one person at a time would be allowed to train, anyone else that tried to follow made it impossible. Heck, people always swore that the Sage Mountain was never in the same place during different visits, like it moved around. Kaneko stayed focused on walking, but with her eyes closed, she soon realized the weakness of what she was doing. She tripped over a large rock and smashed her face into the ground. She could sense the location of Sage Mountain, but she wasn't able to see the ground in front of her. She couldn't truly sense nature and sense Sage Mountain at the same time. Kaneko rubbed her nose, which was bleeding. She had smashed her nose into a damn hard rock. She wasn't fragile, but in her backpack was some pretty heavy stuff that added to her weight. Kaneko rubbed her nose, and she shot some blood out of her nostrils. She wiped her face, and she set her nose back into place. Journey, not off to the best of starts. At least you have got to be kidding him, Kaneko said when she saw that the next place she was going to have to go was up the side of a cliff. She was not amused by this. Well, nobody ever said the journey was easy. Kaneko grabbed the side of the mountain, and dug her fingers into the rock. She lifted herself up, before she started to slowly make her way up. She would push her fingers into rock, and use small ledges as places for her feet. When she couldn't find a place to grab, she would make one by digging her fingers deep into the stone. This isn't bad so far, Kaneko whispered to herself as she climbed up the side. She couldn't close her eyes though, so she would have to wait until she got to the top to close them and sense the location that she would have to go next. It was true that she could fly up the side, but that wasn't allowed. The journey had to be made with your own hands and feet. That was a condition, having a body capable of withstanding the journey to the mountain. She could do anything that she was capable of to get there, except teleporting or flying. The journey was a hard one, but one that she signed up for. I should have brought some music. Kaneko cursed herself for not thinking ahead in the case she had to climb a mountain. In retrospect, she should have expected to do that, since she was going to Sage Mountain. All that could be heard were her breaths and the crunching of rock as she continued to climb. She wasn't even that bothered by her pack. Her backpack was larger than she was, and had a good amount of stuff inside of it. Well, it had a lot of her clothes, it had a lot of snacks, and it had things that she could use to fish. She couldn't use her magic for this entire journey to the mountain, the entire journey. No magic at all. Sage training took a strong body that was capable of using senjutsu, and a strong willpower, or at least she assumed that was why you weren't allowed to use senjutsu. She hoped it wasn't for the reason that it was simply to make the journey harder. Well, Sun Wukong went through this very same training, and look at him now. A powerful Buddha with enough power to defeat an army of lesser beings with ease. The results of this method of training paid off. Kaneko grunted when a rock hit her in the eye. She had gripped too hard and the rock had jerked out of the cliff. She had slammed the rock into her own face. There has to be an easier way to do this. Kaneko muttered to herself as she looked down, seeing she hadn't made as much progress as she would have liked. She had climbed maybe 20 meters up, not as impressive when compared to the height of this mountain. Compared to a human's normal progress rate, this was great. She could toss her snacks. No, she wasn't that desperate just yet. Ah! Kaneko shouted as she slipped off of the rock when she noticed a wet patch on the rock, with moss on it. She fell off of the side of the cliff, and she crashed into the ground. Kaneko grunted and sat back up, looking up at the mountain with a glare. Why did it have to be the first challenge? Why couldn't it be that she needed to walk through a tiger-filled forest or something easier? I won't lose to this, Kaneko said as she got back up and pat herself down. Kaneko took her bag off, before she aimed, and she threw it high into the air, and it continued to fly, until it slowed and landed on a pretty large ledge 1/10th of the way up. Next, she took a position, and she jumped, going up close to 10 meters up, before she grabbed the side of the cliff with a hand, and kicked off of it. She lunged up further than before, reaching where she fell off, and going 10 meters higher than that. She was still only a third of the way up to her back, but progress was progress. So, she continued to make her way up the mountain. Moss. Kaneko slipped, losing her grip, and slammed her chin into the side of the mountain, before she tumbled back down to the bottom. Kaneko hit her head on the ground, and grunted in pain as she winced. She looked up the mountain, and saw a lot of moist moss there. Kaneko got back up, and she thought to herself. Climbing up normally didn't work, and jump climbing worked better, but not enough to get her up. It was like she would actually have to climb up the side of the mountain as if she was running up it. Yet, that was impossible, and with that thought Kaneko frowned and gripped her hands tightly. Chakra, the base of Senjutsu Aoa. Kaneko shouted out as she ran towards the mountain, and her feet glowed a little as she used her chakra. The very life force that was inside of herself, and she started to run up the side of the mountain. When she got to the moss, she lost complete control over her chakra and fell back. She kicked off the mountain, and smiled softly to herself. Her little temper tantrum had given her an idea. Running up the side of it hadn't been her idea when she used chakra, she had just been planning on venting and maybe using her feet to put some handholds in the mountain. Chakra makes the impossible possible. Kaneko started to run up the side again, but this time she closed her eyes and focused on her chakra, and her chakra alone. She completely ignored the magic in her body, and focused on her chakra. Not the moss, not the mountain, only her chakra and the goal that she had set for herself. Kaneko gasped when she lost control over her chakra and she fell back to the bottom, but she had felt her foot for a brief second cratering the rock. She landed on her feet, and she looked up with her eyes widened. 50 meters in one go. She had nearly made it to her bag. Too much chakra, and I lose control. Too little chakra and I slip off. This mountain has a lot of slippery moss on it. The only way to get up without climbing equipment is to use chakra, and control it to the feet properly. Kaneko thought with wide eyes. The moss was completely natural, having been grown over years and years. Kaneko touched her hands to the ground, and bent over, her white with pink striped panties showing. Thankfully, she was the only one around for miles. Her feet glowed with her chakra, and she took off in a run, before her foot touched the mountain. She closed her eyes, and she tried to memorize the perfect amount of chakra as she ran. Kaneko controlled her breathing, and emptied her mind of everything but the feeling of chakra, and the amount she needed. Her foot sank into the mountain a little, so she lowered the chakra, and then her feet started to slip, so she increased the chakra. She found the balance, and focused on maintaining it as she grabbed her bag, having reached it, and she continued to run up the side of the mountain. It was easier to run than walk, so she didn't slow down. Kaneko felt dizzy for a second, and she slipped, dropping her bag and falling towards the bottom once more. Kaneko grabbed her bag, and she landed on the ledge she had tossed it to earlier, before she groaned and touched the side of her head. Her nose was bleeding, and her ears were ringing. I can't run, I have to do it slowly. I have to get used to the height, Kaneko said with a groan. When she was flying, she didn't need to worry about this, but the air was so different than when she was flying. When her wings were out, her body adjusted easier to heights. This was harder, to control her breathing, chakra, and speed at the same time. She put her bag on her back, before she looked at her hands and feet. Could she do the same thing with her hands? The light glow on her hands showed that yes, she could use chakra with her hands. Kaneko grabbed the moss, and she started to climb like earlier, but with chakra. Kaneko closed her eyes since she didn't need to worry about paying as much attention to the wall now. Kaneko just needed to control the speed that she traveled at, and her chakra. Kaneko focused, breathed, controlled herself, and she opened her eyes in surprise when she reached up, but felt nothing but cold air. Suddenly, she noticed a change in air temp. I made it? Kaneko asked with wide eyes, and she looked down and saw that she had made it to the top. She had placed herself into a trance, and had made it to the top of the mountain. Kaneko crawled back onto the mountain, and she gasped as she noticed that she was closer to empty on chakra than before. She had less than 10% of her chakra, having used most of it to climb. She was tired and hungry, and she noticed that the moon had replaced the sun in the sky, meaning she had been climbing for hours. Kaneko looked at her hands, and she saw that they were covered in dirt. She gripped them, before she opened up her bag and grabbed a bag of chips. She could use a snack now more than ever, to recover her chakra, and fill her empty belly. While she ate, Kaneko closed her eyes and tried to sense out the direction she needed to go next. The wind blew through her hair, and she felt pretty peaceful. She had just climbed a mountain, and the air tasted so fresh and crisp. She had never felt better in her life, despite how she was sore in her hands, feet, and her head hurt a little from hitting it more than a little. Kaneko touched the back of her head, and she saw that her head hurt, and she felt that her hair had dried in one spot. She had been bleeding at some point. Kaneko opened up her bag, and she pulled out a tent that she would be using to make camp for the night. Kaneko started to set it up, before she nodded to herself. She climbed a mountain, and had walked/run many miles away from the city. Kaneko had made some good progress, and Sage Mountain was closer to him before. When she woke up, she would be going down traveling through then mountains and continue on her way. She needed her sleep though, to recover the chakra that she had lost. Kaneko yawned when her tent was set up, before she crawled inside of it and pulled out a pillow, and a few blankets to cover herself with as she zipped her tent back up. She still had a long way to go, but she felt like she had made some progress today. She would make more tomorrow. KH! Kaneko shouted out as she punched a bear in the jaw, breaking its neck and sending its corpse flying through a tree. The tree fell to the ground, and Kaneko landed softly on her feet, panting only slightly. She was into the 11th day of her journey to find Sage Mountain, and she was still hot on the trail. With each passing day she was getting closer, but sadly, her snacks were starting to run out. She had packed snacks for a month, but she had been using those snacks to help her replenish her lost chakra when she spent entire days mountain climbing. Going up and down, using her chakra day after day was extremely exhausting on her chakra reserves. She wasn't hunting this bear, she was fighting over a fish that this bear had caught. She wanted to eat the fish, and she was going to get the fish. The bear was a male bear, thankfully so she didn't just kill a mother bear. Kaneko walked over and she grabbed the fish off of the ground, and she placed it in the water to wash the dirt off of it. Kaneko created a blue, small fireball in her hand using her chakra and she threw it on the ground. It burst and roared to life as a small flame. This was something she already knew how to do with chakra, even if it was a skill she preferred not to use before she started her training. She was still a nekishu, so fish organs and scales didn't bother her stomach. She just wanted it to be cooked, so she got out a stick and stabbed it into the fish, before holding it close to the flames to cook. Her journey was not an easy one, that was for sure. She was covered in scrapes, and her feet had never been more sore. Her knees were scrapped, the same with her elbows, and her hands had never felt more used. Her clothes were scrapped up as well, the entire left sleeve missing, and the bottom of her skirt was ripped. The training will be worth it. Kaneko reminded herself, knowing that this training made legends. Those who took the training never fell to the malicious nature of Mother Nature, and the way it only wanted the strongest to survive. If you weren't strong, Mother Nature made sure you were food for somebody stronger than you. Kaneko was stronger than the bear, so she had killed it and taken its food well. She didn't plan on killing it until it attacked her. She was just going to steal the fish. Foolish bear, attacking her like that. Kaneko closed her eyes, and she sensed the general direction of Sage Mountain. She opened her eyes, and she looked and saw a rather large river that she would have to cross. She saw a log going down the river, before it was sucked into the heavy rapids and crushed against rocks. Kaneko gulped deeply, and she shivered. It was a bad time to not be able to swim. Kaneko smelled that the fish was ready after a while, so she started to eat it on the stick, and she put the flame out with some dirt. Standing up, she grabbed her now smaller backpack, most of it had been snacks, and put it on her back again. Now, the backpack was only about as large as she was, so not very large compared to earlier. She walked and ate at the same time, at least glad that she was out of the mountains and back on flat land. She couldn't, not allowed to, fly over the river, and she couldn't take the long way and go find a bridge either. That would ruin her sense of direction, and possibly make the journey take several more weeks in order for her to do that. If she was lucky and didn't just find that the river emptied into the ocean. So, she had to go across it somehow, but she couldn't swim and didn't like the look of those rapids. Just a great day to be her. There had to be some kind of trick to do this, like when she ran up the side of the mountain. Some way to use her chakra to allow her to make the impossible, possible. It was too bad that she couldn't walk on water, because that would be a godly ability for her to use right now. Kaneko blinked. Why couldn't I walk on water? I just got done rejecting the notion of gravity. Kaneko questioned herself. If she could use chakra with her feet to walk up a mountain, she could do the same thing with water, right? Chakra makes the impossible, possible. Yes, she could make this work. Kaneko looked at her feet, taking off her shoes, before she sat down and started to undress herself. She pulled out a white swimsuit, a school-issues one, but with her own preferred color. She stripped out of her clothes, her small body on display for the world around her. She really didn't have big breasts, but she had soft for the tips. She opened up her swimsuit, before she slipped herself into it. Her nudity vanished when she put it on, and the swimsuit clung unbelievably tight to her body. At least the water would clean her off, because she was a little dirty, pretty dirty. Okay, how is this going to work? Kaneko talked to herself. Days with no sentient conversation with somebody led you to talk with yourself. Kaneko looked at the edge of the river where it was more shallow, and she walked towards it. She put chakra around her feet, before she took a step and failed. Her foot reached the sand under the water without even looking like it was going to stay afloat on it. This was not the same as clinging to the surface of something. So, she pulled her foot out and moved her body into the water, before she sat down and let the water pass over the lower parts of her body. She thought about the water, having nobody to teach this to her. This wasn't even a chakra control method for Yukai. For Yukai, the way you learned to control your chakra was by simply learning how to form Jujitsu with it, and going from there with it. They expected you to get more experience with it as you used it, and allow your natural-born skill to decide how good your control was. This was not like that. For the first time, she was actually having to control the amount of chakra she put into something, the concentration of constantly putting chakra into it, and the way she put chakra into it. Why does water have to move? Kaneko asked herself as she slapped the water with her hand. Chakra control was supposed to be easier for her, she was a girl. It was a fact that while in most cases men had more chakra, women had better control over it. Yet, she was sure that she had some pretty bad control if she wasn't figuring this out right away. The rocks didn't move, I touched it, and stuck. Kaneko complained to herself as she slapped the water again. Of course, her frustration with this might simply be because she couldn't swim, and she didn't want her journey to come to an end for a lame reason like that. Maybe she could fly, and Naruto would never know that. Kaneko slapped her cheeks hard enough that she left red marks on them at the very thought of cheating. For one, Naruto would know for sure, and he would forbid her from ever training with him if she took a shortcut. Several Yukai had went to Naruto, made it to Sage Mountain, only to be sent right back because they cheated. Cheating and taking shortcuts was not an option for this journey, you had to show your determination. How? Kaneko asked herself as she let the water run over her dirty hands, cleaning them. She cupped her hands and started to splash water on herself, drinking some of it. It was fresh water, so drinkable, if a bit impure. Water was fun to play in, when she didn't have to worry about drowning. The way it moved over her skin, and changed directions when it went down her body, was an enjoyable sensation. The water warming itself as it absorbed the heat from her body, and losing its coolness. The sun warming it as well, allowing her to bask in it. If only she was as adaptable as water, she would figure out how to cross this river for sure. Adaptable? Kaneko asked herself as she placed her hand in the water, and she watched as the water changed directions around her hand. She watched it for entire minutes, and she moved her hand around in the water. The water always changed directions, flowing around her hand the second she moved it. The hand moved, and the water adapted to the changes of her hand instantly, as if her hand was no bother to the water in the slightest. With mountain climbing, she had only needed to adjust for her own body weight, which wasn't much. Kaneko stood up before she stepped out of the water and started to push chakra out of her feet and down towards the ground. Kaneko took a step on the water, and her foot only sank a few inches, up to a little above her ankle. She pushed more chakra out of her foot, and her foot went up to the top, standing on the water. A blinding smile came over her face. It isn't the same. I need to push chakra out and change the chakra amount to adjust to the water, Kaneko whispered to herself as she did the same with her other foot. She held the position for a while, and she changed the amount of chakra to her feet as she took another step into deeper water. Kaneko didn't change the chakra, and took a step back, but didn't sink. It wasn't like was sticking to things this time. There was a little more room for leniency when it came to putting too much chakra into her feet. Kaneko pushed even more chakra, and the water under her exploded outwards, and her feet sank to the bottom, with the water running over her feet again. Kaneko frowned before she stepped out of the water, using less chakra, and put her feet on top of it again. Okay, not as much leniency for error as she thought. Kaneko grabbed her bag, before she threw it hard enough that her bag went all the way across the river. Now, if Kaneko wanted to sleep in a tent tonight, she would have to make it across the river before night fell. She also wouldn't have to worry about her bag getting wet at this rate, or water flowing into it, and ruining all of the stuff she brought. Kaneko took a shaky step. She was not used to walking on water, and moved slowly across it, baby steps in the amount of progress she was making. She watched her feet, and she watched the water as she moved, not even affected by the increasing speeds of the water as she used more chakra to keep herself standing on top of the water. If she used too much chakra, the water would be pushed down, and she would still sink. If she used too little, she just wouldn't float. This time, she had to adjust to the water itself, which took a hell of a lot more effort than simply sticking to something. This is so hard, Kaneko said with a wince as she nearly lost her concentration and fell into the water. She needed to stay focused. She needed something to keep her focused on her task. Like with power and how she climbed the mountain. Yet, she couldn't take her eyes off the water, or she wouldn't know how much chakra to put into her feet. A leaf? Kaneko asked as she saw a leaf floating on the water, without a care in the world. She leaned down and picked it up, nearly losing control, before she crushed the leaf in her hand. Leaves didn't think about how they floated on the water, they just did it. She didn't need to think either, she had to simply trust her body to know the right amount of chakra, and do this as if it was second nature. She couldn't let her thoughts and insecurity ruin this for her now. Kaneko broke into a run, and whenever she was about to slip, she ran faster and changed the chakra amount into her feet. Kaneko, without the friction of the ground, actually ran faster than before. She skated along the water, and she smiled to herself. Oh no! Kaneko shouted when she lost control and fell into the water. She hit her face on a rock, and she looked up and saw that she made slipped in the shallow end of the other side of the river. Kaneko smiled to herself, before she laughed a little. She never needed to be afraid of water again. Kaneko laid down in the water, her face being the only thing that was outside of it, as she looked up at the sky with a proud look on her face. She had done it, she had walked on water, and she had made it to the other side. She had slipped, and fell, and failed near the end, but she had done it. She let the water run over her, before she splashed her arms around, and sat up. She reached into the side pocket of her bag, and took out some sandals. She would walk in her swimsuit until she dried off, and changed back into her other clothes. The days she spent climbing the mountain had increased her chakra reserves, not much, but enough that she still had plenty of chakra left after crossing the river, using more chakra than she did when she stuck to things. Sage Mountain, here I come, Kaneko whispered to herself, eyes closed as she sensed the location of Sage Mountain again. It was only a matter of time. Kaneko didn't really know what to do. Days and days of walking had led her to the ocean, and she was supposed to go beyond that, no doubt. She didn't know what to do, her chakra wouldn't last the trip to the main continent. Japan was an island nation, she should have known that her chances of being taken off of Japan was pretty high. It was one of the smallest nations in the entire world, people would have noticed a huge mountain that reached the clouds. Yet, nobody ever reported it, so unless it was invisible, she doubted that it would remain hidden. She didn't know what she was supposed to do now, so she sat down on the sand and stared out into the ocean. She would have that is, if it weren't covered by an absurd amount of mist. When she had reached the ocean, a lot of mist had started to come in. She couldn't even enjoy an ocean view at this rate, her journey had been ended nearly 20 days into it by bad luck. Effort couldn't get her through this one, since it was simply. Holy shit. Kaneko said as she looked at something huge coming closer and closer to her. Earlier, when she felt the barrier moving, it hadn't been her mind playing tricks on her, or nature helping her gain better sensing abilities by trusting it. It had actually been moving. She could feel the barrier getting closer, around that giant thing in the distance. Hidden by the mist, the unnatural mist. The thing coming closer to her was unreal in size. It was so tall that its back reached the clouds, and she could see a large moving head. This thing was an animal. She could see a huge neck bigger than any creature that she had ever seen in her entire life. Before now, the largest thing she had ever heard about was 15 meters tall. She had never seen or heard of anything bigger. If it existed, she just didn't know about it. This thing was so huge that it was several miles tall, and even thicker. It had a lot of spikes coming out of it, at least that was what she felt like she could see. It started to lean forward, and the mist started to move out of the way. Giant fucking turtle. Huge turtle. Kaneko shouted in shock when she saw what it was. The largest creature she had ever seen was a huge-ass turtle. Its head alone was like the side of a small town, and its body was the size of a large city. No, it was bigger. This turtle was the size of an island, with mountains on its back reaching the sky. The entire thing was always in motion, which would explain why nobody could ever pinpoint the exact location of Sage Mountain. The mountain was never in the same place 2 days in a row. Kaneko walked on the water, and she started to run towards the turtle. She was smiling widely, having made the journey to the barrier. It took her nearly a month, and the turtle actually coming to her when she made it to the ocean, but she did it. Kaneko got closer, and the closer to the turtle that she got, the less dense the mist became. The turtle had a huge forest on its back, large enough that Kaneko was sure that her journey was nowhere near over with. Sitting on the middle of the back of the giant turtle, visible even from where she was a mountain that stretched into the sky. Far above the level of the clouds, it looked newer than the other mountains. The rest of the mountains pointed outwards in different ways, like spikes, and they were light gray in color like rock or the turtle. This mountain looked like an actual mountain, as if it had been moved, or created later on in the turtle's life. The turtle ignored her as she jumped onto the side of it, and she used her mountain climbing to walk up the side of it. It would take her a great many minutes to get up onto its back, but that was because of its sheer size. The second she was on it though, the turtle started to turn around and move itself away from Japan. Kaneko looked at Japan quickly vanish, this creature faster than any other ocean dweller. Its size giving it amazing speed, but without it causing any waves strangely enough. It was truly at one with nature, like a giant moving island. The ocean breeze energized her as she walked, and she had a pleasant smile on her face as she walked as well. A giant turtle, it is a giant turtle. Kaneko spoke to herself with excitement. This was the biggest creature she had ever seen, and it wasn't attacking her. Was she supposed to not be freaked out and amazed by it? She got to the shell, and she saw that grass was growing on the turtle. Kaneko froze when she saw another giant-ass turtle on the back of the turtle. Her eyes widened, and her jaw nearly dropped. This turtle wasn't anywhere near the size of the island turtle, but it was still close to 30 meters tall. Kaneko was actually like an ant when compared to the size of this turtle, and it just ignored her and went on its way as if nothing happened. You are a little one. The turtle spoke as it took notice of her, and Kaneko frozen. Not even her impressive strength would be able to put a scratch on something so huge. That thing must weigh several hundred tons. That was far too much for her strength. If this creature wanted to kill her, it wouldn't be too hard. She had reached Sage Mountain, but getting to Sage Mountain was still going to be difficult. Yes, I am. I am here to speak to Master Naruto, and seek his training. Kaneko shouted up for the turtle, who looked at her. Naruto spoke of you. Kaneko tells you very well, but you will find that this island will not care for you. If you wish to reach the peak of Sage Mountain, be prepared for a fight. The large turtle spoke, and it started to slowly move in the direction it had been going. Kaneko ran towards the turtle, before she jumped and moved herself in front of it. The turtle stopped, before it looked down at her. Yes? The turtle politely asked. Please, tell me what route I must take to reach Sage Mountain the fastest from here. Kaneko requested, and the turtle looked towards Sage Mountain. She didn't know this island like this turtle, and she was not above asking for help. To use senjutsu, you literally helped yourself to the very nature of the universe. If you were too stubborn to ask for help, you couldn't use it. Well, at least that was her impression of it. Naruto is the undisputed master of all of the creatures of this island. No matter where you go, they will find you. The quickest way to Sage Mountain is a straight line. The turtle spoke, and it walked over Kaneko, shading her from the sun until it passed over. Kaneko looked towards Sage Mountain, and she sighed. Her goal was in her sights, but she had the bad feeling that she was nowhere near getting there just yet. Though seems water walking came in handy getting even to this point. Holy crap, Kaneko said with wide eyes when she realized something. She would have never been able to get up onto this island turtle if she didn't know how to walk up mountains and walk on water. The things she had learned in the last month of her journey, they were required for her to continue her training. She didn't even think about it when it happened, but her skills that she had learned on the way here were pretty amazing. She couldn't have continued her training without those skills, even though they seemed so basic. They had allowed her to reach a point not many people have reached. In her amazement, she didn't realize something very important. That was, until she felt the heavy thumbs of something large growing closer to her. This was not a turtle though, at least not to her knowledge. She could smell it, and it smelled like a fur-covered creature. Kaneko raised her fists up to prepare to defend herself, and she smiled to herself when she saw the shadow of this beast. It wasn't nearly as big as the normal just now, still huge, but not as big. That is adorable, Kaneko said when she saw what animal it was. It was a huge rabbit, about 10 meters tall, and covered in fluffy white fur. It didn't seem like it could talk, but it looked towards her and tilted its head. Kaneko lowered her fists and sighed in relief. A bunny was a bunny, size didn't really matter, but this was not a violent animal at heart. Raiayoa. The rabbit screeched as it kicked a tree, and the tree went flying towards Kaneko. Kaneko raised her fist and punched the tree, snapping it at the trunk, only to be surprised when the rabbit moved with great speed in front of her. The rabbit towered over her greatly. This rabbit was like 6 to 8 times taller than she was, and she had just seen it kick a tree out of the ground like it was nothing, and move with amazing speed. Still adorable, but scary, Kaneko said as she crossed her arms. It did not help her when the rabbit kicked her entire body, and she was smashed through trees, rocks, and the ground. She formed a crater when she hit a stone back, and she bled from her forehead, nose, and the back of her head. Her arms were going to be bruised, and her bag had been left where she had been attacked. Kaneko landed on the ground, and she gasped and tried to get some air back into her empty lungs. She had just gotten the shit kicked out of her by a giant bunny. Kaneko got to her feet, and she ran towards the rabbit with her arms in a boxing stance. The rabbit jumped into the air, higher than she could, and landed behind her. She couldn't turn around fast enough before she was kicked again. Kaneko was smashed into the ground, before she was tossed into the air, and the rabbit unleashed a combo of attacks on her. Paw fists and kicks, before doing a front flip and slamming her into the ground with the strongest kick yet. The ground around her exploded with dirt, and she was in a crater of shattered earth, while the rabbit landed on the ground an impressive distance away. I'm getting my ass kicked by a bunny? Kaneko asked herself, and it hurt to move her body. Kaneko stood up again though, and she summoned flames to her hand with her chakra. Kaneko looked at the rabbit, wondering how she could win. That rabbit had more strength, speed, and possibly it was more durable thanks to its immense size. She threw flames at it, and the rabbit jumped in the air to dodge. Kaneko jumped in the air as well, and she grabbed onto the fur of the beast, hanging on tightly to the fur on its neck. When the rabbit landed on the ground, Kaneko was nearly thrown off. Kaneko raised up a fist, but abandoned her attack when the rabbit jumped into the air, nearly throwing her off again. She was bucked over and over again, and she was forced to give it her all to hang on. She was thrown off, and the rabbit jumped after her, open mouth. She was inside of its mouth when it chomped on her. Kaneko was not having any of that though. She used her powerful arms and legs to push up against the teeth of the beast. Hell no, not happening, gross, Kaneko said when she started to get covered with saliva. It was dripping off of the teeth of the rabbit, and it started to drip onto her face. It dripped on her chest and stomach as well, her shirt having been ripped up revealing her bra and her stomach. She had taken a fair amount, a lot of damage, from her short fight with the rabbit. What kind of freakishly, physically powerful animals lived here? Better yet, this was a damn rabbit. What hunted rabbits like this? What kind of powerful creature made this rabbit into prey, and how could she avoid it? Better yet still, how was she going to avoid being turned into rabbit crap? Because that was what it looked like was going to happen. Her arms were struggling to keep up with the biting strength of this oversized rabbit. It had a little to do with the fact that her arms were sore and hurting, but mostly the freakish strength of the rabbit. Kaneko shivered when the tongue of the rabbit licked her back, butt, and her legs with one swift motion. It was a rough tongue, and it nearly stripped her of her skirt. It did steal her shoes from her though, slipped them right off and down the throat of the rabbit. The rabbit's jaw let go of her, and she hit the ground when the sounds of struggling was heard. Kaneko groaned, and she looked a small distance away and saw that the rabbit was fighting another creature. This creature quickly killed the rabbit, snapping its neck, and Kaneko held her hurting body. It was a giant panther, sleek and black, closer to 16 meters tall. It had the rabbit by the neck, the rabbit already dead, and started to walk away with it. The rabbit had been so preoccupied with trying to eat Kaneko, it hadn't noticed another, larger creature preparing to eat it, with the rabbit being able to put up little fight. The panther didn't care about Kaneko. It had little he had very little care about such a small meal like her. She was barely even a bite to it, while the rabbit would keep it fed for a long time compared to a snack like her. Peep prrggggggg. The panther growled towards her, and Kaneko winced as she forced herself to get up, grabbing her bag, and limping away from the larger creature. She could read those eyes, and those eyes held a death threat to her. She might not be much more than a snack, but she was still meat, and if she didn't leave, she would become a snack all the same. Getting to Sage Mountain is going to be hard, Kaneko thought as she looked towards a hollowed-out tree. She got down on her knees, and she went into a hole, before she opened her bag. She pulled out bandages, before she started to wrap all of the injured parts of her body. Her arms, her head, and her thighs were getting wrapped up just enough to help her until she healed. Yui! Kaneko groaned in pain. She was going to have to find some herbs to make medicine for her wounds. The path to Sage Mountain was riddled with dangerous beasts. It's getting hot. The island turtle must be in a tropical zone right now, Kaneko thought as she slowly unwrapped her bandages. She had been resting, hiding, and living off of her remaining snacks for the past 4 days. It took her that long to recover from the rabbit incident, as she would forever call it. She could never undo that damage to her pride that having a rabbit, even a giant one, kick her ass had caused. Most of the animals on this island were not friendly. Don't get her wrong, they weren't attack on sight either, but they were not friendly. The animals of this island seemed to have a deep respect for strength. There was also a chain of command in some form. The huge gorillas ranked higher, and the more peaceful creature ranked lower. She had seen that one just by hiding and observing the animals. The animals were also extremely intelligent, with near-human or human levels of thinking ability. They had systems, rankings, and they did things like rock, paper, scissors with each other. The crap never won, since it could only ever throw scissors. All healed, Kaneko said, though she was sweating pretty badly. She was out of food. She would have to start hunting, or stealing food, just to survive at this point. Her body and chakra had recovered, but sadly, she was low on energy at the moment. She didn't know what berries were poison, and if the strawberries she saw on the island were actually strawberries. She had seen a banana and strawberry even bigger than she was, the banana being nearly 3 meters in size. The island itself was alive, and didn't follow the common laws of nature. It somehow supported a large number of diverse creatures. She had seen a 15-meter-tall penguin walking around in this general area. These creatures were all huge, and dangerous because of their huge size. She had even seen one other sage candidate, a young man, but he had been killed and eaten. She was not the only person who had been given a senjutsu dream, but at the moment, she was the only person alive that she knew of on their journey to get to Naruto. Kaneko moved all of her stuff from her large back into a small bag that she could easily just carry on her back, like a regular backpack. She only had clothes at this point, and a few other unmentionable things. Kaneko looked outside of her little hollow, before she tied up her bag and manipulated the shape with robes to make it more human-shaped. She threw the bag out. Before the second it touched the ground, a large spider jumped onto it. The spider dragged it off. It wasn't as smart as the mammals of the island, and Kaneko sighed in relief. That spider had been freaking her out, waiting for her to come out of her hiding spot. Okay, time to go, Kaneko said as she made a run for it, but making sure to not make any more noise than she had to. She ran up the side of a tree, and she hid inside of the foliage and paused her motions. Kaneko studied the area around her carefully. She was not allowing herself to be beaten again so easily. She would attack the next animal she had to fight by surprise. Since she had the size and strength disadvantage, she would use her small size to let her sneak up on her possible opponents better. Giant ape. It was a beast that stood at 17 meters tall, and it walked around with purpose and pride. It was huge and muscular. If she got her ass handed by a rabbit, she didn't want to get punched by this. So, she was completely still and waited for the ape to pass by. Kaneko twitched when several apes gathered together, male and female, and she always let out a shock scream when she saw that, and smelled, that it was a very heavy atmosphere. Heavy not as in violence, but heavy as in romantic. Kaneko closed her eyes, but she could still hear the grunts of the creatures mating. Male on male, male on female, female on female, male and male on female. She had seen it all going on in this mating orgy of perversion, and she never wanted to see this again. Yet, she would never be unable to see it. Kaneko started to move, seeing as the apes were distracted by their acts of debauchery and sin. I am not shit, Crocodiles as well. Kaneko thought as she saw crocs coming from the south and heading towards the apes. Kaneko stayed where she was, and the apes were alerted to the presence of the crocs when another ape screamed. Kaneko looked at the location of the ape and saw it was close to where she was. The apes stopped their mating, and they all got ready for war with the crocs. Shit, as much as this will be awesome to watch, I should leave soon. Kaneko thought when the apes and crocs charged at each other. Every day on this island was another creature war, and it was never good to be caught up in one of those. Kaneko climbed up higher slowly. The trees were very tall, and she jumped from the top of one tree to another. She kept jumping until she was out of this battle zone. Kreia! A giant hawk screeched as it flew towards her, and Kaneko saw talons coming closer to her. This she could handle. The hawk was only 3 meters tall, but with a huge wingspan. Kaneko kicked the hawk in the leg, and it snapped, falling to the ground in the middle of the war zone that was the ape/croc battle. An ape questioned as it looked up at the sky, just as Kaneko landed on a tree. The crocs, who were battered by brute force, took this chance to escape and live another day. The apes focused on Kaneko, who was cursing her luck. The one animal on this island she was strong enough to beat in one hit, and beating it alerted one of the most powerful animals to the fact she was there. The next thing she knew, there were 6 jumping apes around her, all poised to attack. Kaneko jumped up into the air higher, and ran up the arm of one of the apes. She got to the shoulder, and jumped out of the group. She landed on the ground, just as the apes landed on the ground behind her. Kaneko ran over to a tree, and ripped it out of the ground, before she threw it at an ape. It hit the ape in the back of the knee, making it lose its balance and falling into its group. I'm out of here. Kaneko spoke as she turned tail and ran. She was no fool. That was a group of 11 giant apes, and she had just pissed off 6 of them. The apes looked at her run, before they shrugged and got back to mating. Kaneko didn't know this, and continued to run. She didn't look back as she ran, just knowing that behind her were ruthless creatures of death and destruction. Kaneko did notice that she didn't hear them chasing her, and she slowed down and looked behind her. Yowawa! Gross, perverted apes, Kaneko said with contempt. The animals that were the most perverted had to be the apes on this island, that, and the weird plants that had mutated and grown over the who knows how many years. Kaneko didn't trust the plant that had a dragon-like head on it, with fruit that looked somewhat like boobs. She saw the vines on those things, and how those vines were covered in weird fluids, and had suction cup-like ends to them. Kaneko walked before she hit something and looked towards what she hit. The next thing she knew, she was in the fist of a large creature. It was more muscular than the apes, more gorilla-like. It had battle scars all over its body, and it was looking towards her. It was only about 14 meters tall, but those bulging muscles were larger than the apes, who were a bit more on the fat side. Grrrr. The gorilla spoke to her, and Kaneko had no idea what it was trying to say. She didn't speak animal, despite being somewhat of an animal herself. This is Kong, he says you are pretty. A voice from underneath them said, and Kaneko saw that it was the same turtle from the other day. It hadn't gone as far as she had thought. Not animal on the island hunted or hurt turtles. Seeing as they lived on a giant turtle, actually a tortoise, they respected them. He also wonders why you are here. The turtle spoke again. Oh yeah? The gorilla said, and Kaneko looked at the turtle. I am seeking to get to the top of Sage Mountain. Will you allow me to go? Kaneko asked politely, showing respect for the large creature. Kaneko nearly gagged when the creature smelled her, and breathed on her. It had foul breath, but the worst part was when it kissed the side of her head. The entire side of her head, her entire right side was covered in gorilla spit. It continued to kiss her over and over again for the next few minutes, and Kaneko twitched. Okay, you like me, I get it. Kaneko shouted out. Oh lo ah oh. The gorilla spoke towards her. Kong says that kiss is proof of loyalty, and it will allow you to pass through gorilla territory. The turtle they were on spoke. Oh ha ha ah. The gorilla spoke again. Also, you are not his type. He thinks you are pretty, but scrawny. The kiss is a platonic show of love and loyalty. Kong is loyal to Naruto. The turtle spoke, and Kaneko was let down on the ground. She was a little mad. She didn't like the scrawny comment. Also, she was a little conflicted. The gorilla was not her type either, but nobody liked being told they weren't somebody's type. The gorilla jumped into the forest, and the roars of battle could be heard, while Kaneko was left sitting on the turtle. So how close am I? Kaneko asked, some hope in her voice. The turtle moved its head out of the way, and Kaneko's eyes widened when she saw 2 rather fresh corpses. The last ones who went to ape territory ended up like this. The apes do not like having their mating interrupted, but these foolish ones tried to fight them. The turtle spoke. The turtle had no name, nobody named it even though it could talk. It grabbed Kaneko with its mouth, before placing her on the ground. "It is my job to bury all those who die attempting to climb Sage Mountain," the turtle said, and Kaneko noticed the corpses were in a hole, and the turtle moved a lot of dirt over them easily. "I won't become like them. I won't die in this forest. I will receive training from Master Naruto," Kaneko told the large creature. She wasn't just telling him that, she was telling herself that as well. She had come so far from home, and was who knows where. She hadn't seen her friends in nearly a full month, and had struggled to get here. She had climbed mountains, crossed rivers, crossed the nation of Japan itself, and she had fought and avoided giant creatures as she sailed through the ocean on the world's largest creature to her knowledge. She had come too far to just give up and allow herself to die, so she was inspiring herself to survive with her words. The turtle said nothing to her, he just turned around slowly and started to make his way around. "As it stands, you are the only sage candidate alive on the island. In the last few generations, nobody has made it to the top. They either gave up after being on the island, gave up before the island, or died," the turtle said as it slowly walked away. "Nowadays, nobody but those who were arrogant or determined tried go to Sage Mountain. Kaneko, if you quit, you will still have grown stronger," the turtle informed her. It was true. "My king is expecting me to succeed. I saw what happened to when a person attempts to learn senjutsu on their own. Learning senjutsu from Master Naruto, I know that I have gotten stronger. It is easier to control my chakra, and my chakra has grown stronger, but I started something, and I will finish it or die trying," Kaneko said with determination. She didn't want to be like her sister, she didn't want to go power mad and kill people. She didn't want to become mad with power, or have her personality corrupted by senjutsu. Yes, she had gotten stronger. The journey to this island alone had helped her grow stronger than she was at the start of the journey. She had more chakra, and she could control her chakra better than before. The turtle said nothing, and Kaneko turned around and looked towards Sage Mountain. "Don't die. If you make it to the top, you can expect training that will make the struggle worth it. The world itself will be your ally." The turtle have her one last piece of advice. Kaneko nodded her head, before she started to walk towards Sage Mountain. She had come too far to allow the threat of death to make her turn back. "Master Naruto called out to me, if I turn back, I will be no different than my sister who never even tried to come here. I will do what she never did," Kaneko said with a glint in her eye. Before this dream, she had no dreams of her own. She wanted to avoid senjutsu like the plague, because she had seen what it had done to her sister. She had never thought that she would be sent a dream by Master Naruto to invite her to get her training. The legend said those who completed this training learned the secrets to strength that made any lesser form of senjutsu training pale in comparison. This wasn't about just the power, though. She had more reasons, but she knew that her power could one day be used to help the people she loved. Kaneko deadpanned when she saw something moving out of the trees and stand in her path. Kaneko raised her fists up, because she saw a giant penguin standing in her way. The penguin nodded to her, and it moved towards her with impressive speed. Kaneko grabbed it by the beak, and she was pushed across the ground. Kaneko twisted her back, and she used the weight of the penguin to flip him onto his side. Kaneko then focused her chakra to her feet, stuck to the ground, and she leaned back so that she could lift the penguin into the air. Crawl! The penguin struggled, and its wings slapped the side of her head. She could hear bells ringing, but she still threw the penguin into the trees. The penguin squirmed back to its feet, before it moved towards her. It bowed to her politely, before it turned around. "Eh?" Kaneko questioned when she saw the samurai-like penguin waddling away, with a sense of honor about it. The penguin had tried to kill her, and honestly, she was sure it could have killed her. Yet, when she countered its first hit, it was almost like the penguin had decided that she had passed some sort of test, deemed her a worthy opponent, and was willing to wait for her to mature. Kaneko saw the penguin look back to her. She bowed slightly as well, lifting the sides of her skirt up, showing respect to her opponent as well. These were intelligent creatures, and if they showed you respect, you showed them respect as well. That penguin was one of the strongest of the creatures, and though Kaneko couldn't beat it in a fight, she had countered one of its moves, and that was enough for her. Kaneko gripped her fist, and she looked down at it. She slapped her cheeks, and continued back on the path to Sage Mountain. Master Naruto was waiting for her. Hew hew hew. Kaneko panted as she took a break in her climbing. The side of Sage Mountain, getting to it had taken her a while, 2 days of avoiding most creatures that could kill her, and running away from the creatures that she had to fight. She had yet to really kill anything on the island, but she had managed to learn that the berries were not poison. She would manage to injure animals long enough to escape, and get closer to the mountain. Not without injuries of her own, though. Her left leg was bandages up, and she had to put her right arm in a sling. She had messed up her arm pretty badly, and her leg had been scratched up during a fight. She had pulled through though, and she had made it to Sage Mountain. She had started to walk up it, only to find out that Sage Mountain was not something that could be walked up with chakra easily. The rock of the mountain was very smooth, extremely smooth. It was weathered down, and it rained often on the mountain, so half of the time the mountain was wet. Sadly, this made wall walking extremely hard for her. She was on her second day of actually climbing the mountain itself, and she was exhausted. She had reached a ledge, and that ledge had a cave. Thank whoever was watching after her that there were no giant bears in the cave, just a lot of bugs, very big bugs that were much larger than normal, but nothing bigger than maybe 6 inches in size. Kaneko had to resort to using the same method she had started with when it came to climbing. She used her hand to grip the wall, and pull finger holes in it. Then, she pulled herself up, and used her feet to make footholds. Her fingernails were going to need to be done after this, because they were bleeding from the effort she was putting into this. Kaneko had herbs to soothe the pain, but she had been climbing for a while, and wasn't very close to the top. She had barely reached the halfway point. Soup? Yeah! Kaneko shouted in shock when she saw a person sitting next to her. She hadn't even felt his presence when he got there. She couldn't sense even an ounce of anything from him. The old man was offering her a bowl of soup, and Kaneko got a good look at the man. He was old, maybe in his later 60 seconds. His skin was tanned from age and a bit leathery, and he had wrinkles. The man wore an old white t-shirt, and black pants that were kept around his waist with a rope. His gray hair was pulled back into a ponytail, and he had a straw hat on top of his head. Would you like some soup, little sage? The old man asked her, and Kaneko's belly growled at her. It wanted soup now. I don't think so, Kaneko said when she saw that inside of a green jelly were long, purple worms. The bowl was carved from wood, and pretty old itself. Kaneko's belly growled loudly, but she was more curious about the man. Who are you? She asked, curiosity in her tone. I'm just an old man, don't worry about me. Not many people come by here, little sage, so what brings you to Turtle Island? The old man asked Kaneko with a smile on his face, several of his teeth chipped, no doubt from fights seeing as he lived on a hellish island like this one. Kaneko thought about if she should stay or not, but decided that she still needed to rest her hand. I'm here to seek Master Naruto, and learn senjutsu from him, Kaneko told the old man, who laughed a little. What is so funny? Do you think I can't do it? Kaneko asked, her temper starting to flare up. Is learning senjutsu your only reason for coming here? The old man asked her with a knowing look on his face. He sat the worm soup down at her side, and he smiled with a glint in his eyes. His eyes were mostly closed, but they had a glint to them. He spoke as if he knew something that she did not. My sister. She tried to learn senjutsu on her own, and failed. I wished to do what she refused to do. I wished to learn under Master Naruto. I don't want the power in me to hurt my friends. Kaneko told the old man. She didn't say everything, of course, but she did give her insecurity. This old man had most likely been on this island for years. If anyone knew a shortcut up the island, or something to help her, it would be him. Kaneko waited for him to say something, and she noticed that the old man had fallen asleep, but woke up and smiled at her. Sorry, little sage, my old mind's not what it used to be. So these friends, do you love them? The old man asked Kaneko, and she nodded. More than I love myself. They are my family. Kaneko spoke honestly, and the old man gave her a pat on the back. She was nearly thrown off the edge of the mountain, but she looked at the old man, and saw that he was giving her a nod of approval. Senjutsu is a dangerous power, to the user and those around them. One wrong step, and you die. One bad move, and your loved ones die. Yet, it is a beautiful power. People can use it to save lives, help those who need it, protect loved ones. It is all in how you learn it, though. The wise man said to Kaneko, and she nodded to him. She didn't fully agree, of course, and she didn't see the beauty in it. It was a power that you used to grow stronger with. There was nothing beautiful about it to her. Power was power, and it didn't matter where it came from, so long as you trained for it, or paid the price to gain it. What is Master Naruto like? Kaneko asked the wise man, who thought about it for a moment. I don't want to ruin the surprise for you. Little sage, you are close to meeting him. You are only a few hours away after all. The wise man said, and Kaneko blinked and looked up and saw clouds above them. So no, she was not a few hours away, she was a few days away from getting to Master Naruto. I'm not stupid. Kaneko felt the need to comment, and the wise man smiled at her. Sometimes life challenges us to help us grow, but sometimes it just wants us to pay attention to the small details. Don't get into such a rush that you miss out on the smaller details in life, little sage. The wise man said to her, and Kaneko was confused. His words were wise, and they meant something to her. She had rushed here, but she was pretty sure that she didn't miss anything important or small. What could the old man possibly mean? Wise sage, what detail did I miss? Kaneko asked, before the wise man gave her the bowl again, and she looked at it with disgust. The worms were still alive and moving around, but she could tell that unless she ate, he was not going to tell her what she wanted to know. Eat that as good old stamina food, increase your chakra, make it strong. The wise man insisted, and regretting it, Kaneko took chopsticks from him and started to slurp it up. The taste was not pleasant to her, and the texture was downright horrible. It was slimy, and they were moving in her mouth. The taste got weirder as she tried to eat it, but if she didn't chow, then she would feel it moving on the way to her stomach. People always come in a straight line towards Sage Mountain when they get onto Genbachan. The wise man informed Kaneko as she ate worms. Kaneko gulped, and she tried to not vomit it back out. It was harder than it looked not to puke. Yeah, I spent a little less than a month getting here. I want to reach Master Naruto as soon as possible. Staying in the forest was too dangerous, Kaneko said to the wise man, who looked down towards the forest. Do you know what I see? The wise man asked her, and Kaneko looked into the forest. Huge animals, giant turtles, death, I see danger, and Kaneko started, before the next statement from the old man stopped her. I see the stairs. The wise man spoke with humor in his voice as he pointed towards the right side of the mountain. The small detail that Kaneko had missed out on, because she was in such a hurry, was that there were stairs carved into the mountain itself. Kaneko had rushed there straight from the point that she had gotten onto the island turtle, that she didn't even consider the possibility that there were stairs leading up to the top. Patience, little sage, one must be patient to master senjutsu. You can't rush senjutsu, or nature. You came here in such a hurry, you didn't take notice the stairs, you didn't pay attention to nature. The wise man spoke. Kaneko stood up, and she started to walk towards the side of the mountain, before she gripped the wall with her good hand. Aya! Kaneko screamed as she slammed her face into the stone, over and over again. She was leaving a Kaneko-shaped dent in the stone the more she slammed her head into the wall. Over and over again, without rest, while the wise man smiled at her anger at herself. She must be kicking herself for missing the stairs. She could have walked up the side of the mountain in a day, tops, if she had taken the stairs. She had climbed for 2 days, suffering the entire way, because she wasn't patient and didn't look for any other way up the mountain. She had tried chakra, but it didn't work, so instead of searching for another way, she in all of her rush just decided to climb it. She had just assumed that Master Naruto would make the Sage Mountain the hardest part of the journey, without considering that maybe he was going to make this part the easiest. Then again, walking up several miles of stairs was no doubt killer on the legs and stamina anyway. Patience, little sage, that is the first lesson any sage must learn. To be patient, and let nature guide you. You let nature guide you to the island, did you not? The wise man questioned her, and Kaneko stopped beating her face into the stone wall. Her face was covered in dirt, but she felt a little better now despite the pain her face was in. Wise sage, is there anything else I missed? Kaneko asked with a twitching brow. Wise sage? Kaneko asked, and she looked at the old man. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw he was not moving, nor was he breathing. He seemed frozen in place, with his eyes barely open. She started to get closer to him, wanting to close his eyes and lay him on his back so that he could rest in peace, but then… Just kidding! The wise man shouted as he seemingly returned back to life. Ah! Kaneko screamed in shock as she fell down on her butt, her panties on full display, and her butt pressed firmly into the ground. She was grabbing her chest in shock, her heart beating faster than it ever had before. Just playing possum. Okay then, little sage, just go up the steps, and your master Naruto will be waiting for you. Have a nice trip, the wise man said as he waved to her. Kaneko grumbled and started to walk towards the stairs that she hadn't noticed earlier. The wise man grinned to himself as she left, and started walking up the steps. He waited longer and longer, until she was above cloud level. When Kaneko was completely out of sight, and the sound of her footsteps could no longer be heard, the wise man opened his eyes fully. His sparkling, sky-blue eyes. Oh Kaneko-chan, I will see you at the top indeed, the wise man said as was surrounded by a puff of smoke. The wind blew, and once it blew, the smoke vanished to reveal that no longer was an old man sitting there. Instead, sitting in his place was the same man from Kaneko's dream. The dream that had started the journey she was on right now. The goal waiting for her at the top of the mountain. Naruto Uzumaki. Poof. A clone of Naruto Uzumaki. What happened? Kaneko asked herself in her own mind as her eyes started to flutter awake slowly. She remembered taking the stairs and making great progress, but then as she got higher quicker, her body started to feel bad. She was short of breath and had a pretty bad headache. It was hard for her to breathe, and she had felt her stamina draining very quickly. She had taken a rest, but that didn't help her out too much. When she felt a little better, she started to go up again, same pace. Then she blacked out. The stairs are a test, though they are useful later. Kaneko heard a voice, and she noticed that she was seeing white, a lot of white. She could feel the warmth of another person holding her, and she felt hands under her thighs. The front of her body pressed against fabric, and the large back of a man. Test? Kaneko asked weakly, her body not completely used to whatever was happening to her, but at least she felt better than she had before she blacked out. There is little oxygen at the top. When you climb up the stairs, take the easy way, you will suffer from altitude sickness. Don't worry, this isn't a pass/fail test. The familiar voice said to her, and Kaneko felt like she had heard it somewhere recently. Her mind was just really fuzzy, but she could feel that the person was walking for her at the moment. It isn't? Kaneko asked in a small voice. It isn't. If you are patient, you find the stairs. That was a lesson. For people that didn't notice the stairs and climbed up, they had to take their time getting used to the mountain. In the end, it actually takes you longer to use the stairs. The familiar voice told her, and Kaneko thought about it for a second. In her rush to get to the top, she had completely forgotten that this mountain was so tall that it pierced the clouds. The air was very thin, and she had been in such a rush that she forgot that if she didn't take her time, she would suffer from a common illness that comes with high altitudes. It would seem her body was adjusting. How long was I out? Kaneko asked, and she heard a hum. You were out for about a day. You were exhausted as well. You did well climbing up as high as you did though before using the stairs. For effort. The voice gave her words of kindness. You can't rush a journey, and expect not to have some kind of downside. I should have taken the stairs. Kaneko confirmed to herself. If she had simply climbed the mountain, her body would have gotten used to the air much more calmly. Her progress had been slower, but it had been better for her body to do. Please let me down. I need to get back to climbing the mountain soon, Kaneko requested, since she was ready to do this on her own again. She wanted to do this the right way, that way she didn't suffer from altitude sickness again. But Kaneko-chan, open your eyes all the way, and see what is in front of you. The familiar voice told her, and let her down on the flat ground. Kaneko stumbled a little, and she grabbed onto the clothes of the man for support. Kaneko looked around, before her eyes widened when she saw the great horizon in the distance. Clouds far below her current level, continents in the distance as well. She viewed great distances, and saw the ocean itself as a large lake in size from where she was standing. Kaneko turned around, and her eyes nearly sparkled with joy. She saw the temple in her dreams, the great temple of the Master Seventh, Naruto Uzumaki. Kaneko took a few steps, before she felt a hand on her shoulder. Just like in the dream that led her here, Kaneko turned her head. Her eyes widened, and she saw Naruto standing there, looking down at her with a wide smile. Master Naruto, I'm sorry for not making it up here on my own, Kaneko said before she lost her balance and fell onto her butt. Kaneko blushed, before she got on her knees and pressed her forehead into the ground. She had failed, she hadn't made it to the top on her own, she had gotten help along the way. She shouldn't be here unless she got here with her own 2 hands. Did you learn something? Naruto asked her as he sat down on the ground in front of her, and Kaneko finally saw his face. He had whisker marks, 3 on each cheek, and his smile was filled with kindness. Huh? Kaneko asked, and Naruto placed his hands on his knees. Tell me, what did you learn on your journey? Naruto asked her, and Kaneko was stumped for a moment. I learned how to control my chakra better, and I learned that I can't fight everything head-on. I learned that I need to be patient, and I can't always take the easy way out. Kaneko told Naruto, and he clapped his hands together for her. Kaneko was shocked by the sudden noise, but she looked and saw that he was giving her a wide grin. Then you pass. Welcome to Sage Mountain, Kaneko-chan. Naruto spoke as he gave her a warm smile. She was his student now, she had learned what he wanted her to learn. Only certain people were truly ready to learn senjutsu, so Naruto always gave them small trials. If they didn't have a quality to learn senjutsu, he would send them on a journey so that they may learn. If they never got to him, oh well, at least they learned something from the journey that they took, even if they quit. I passed? Kaneko asked with surprise, and Naruto nodded his head. with flying colors. Senjutsu is not easy to learn, Kaneko-chan. It is dangerous, and you may very well die. You need courage, guts, patience, and there is no easy way out. You had the courage to continue the journey, the guts to face the island, you learned patience, and you learned that you can't take the easy way every time. You didn't give up when you struggled, you tried harder. Come on, Kaneko-chan, let's go. Naruto said as he stood up and offered her a hand to get up herself. Kaneko looked at Naruto with wide eyes, frozen in place at the fact that she was now officially his student. If I hadn't learned, what would you have done? Kaneko asked, and Naruto smiled at her, though it was smaller than before. I wouldn't have trained you. Only those who make it to the top can be trained, but only those who are ready will be trained. You made it to the top, and you were ready. So, how about it? Naruto asked as he offered her his hand again. Kaneko smiled softly, and she took his hand. Right away, Kaneko noticed how big his hand was compared to hers. It was so large, but it was filled with warmth, and it made her feel safe right off the bat. I'm ready, Kaneko said to Naruto, and he pulled her into a standing position. Good, your training starts in a few days. I want you to get used to this place, rest up, and get used to the thin air first. Naruto said to her, and he started to walk. Kaneko smiled, and she walked behind him. She could use a rest after the journey that she had been on. It had been a month since she started, and she had finally made it. Everything seemed just so right with the world at the moment to her. She followed him as he walked to the main building, and Kaneko noticed a mirror. In the mirror she saw herself, for the first time since starting the journey. She was covered in dirt and dried blood. Her clothes were an utter mess, her shirt had been reduced to practically nothing, and her bra had been torn as well. Her small breasts were open to anyone to see, and her skirt had been torn up as well. Her panties were in no good condition either, with small tears on them as well. She had scraps and bruises on her body, and her hair was messy, it hadn't seen shampoo in over a month even if she cleaned it with water. That is me? Kaneko asked herself as she stopped, and looked at her reflection, which Naruto noticed, and he smiled at her. What do you see? Naruto asked her as he looked down at her. He was proud of how she looked right now. She had become dirty, and hurt through her trials and efforts. She was cute, sure, but what was more important was the fact that her appearance was proof of her hard work. He doubted she had ever looked like this before in her life because of raw hard work and determination. I see a dirty girl, covered in mud and blood. Her clothes are destroyed, and her body is small, but I don't pity her. I'm proud of how she looks. Kaneko questioned as she searched her feelings. Naruto smiled at her words. She had some self-confidence issues with her body, but a lot of people did. Naruto just liked the fact that she was proud of herself. You see all of that? Naruto asked with a glint in his eye, and Kaneko looked at him curiously. Master, what do you see? Kaneko asked, and Naruto moved so that he was standing behind her, and in front of the mirror as well. He got down on a knee, and he reached around her and wiped off some of the dirt from her body. I see Kaneko Tuju, Naruto told her, and Kaneko looked into his reflection's eyes with surprise. That is all? Kaneko asked him in shock, and Naruto nodded. That was all he saw when he looked into the mirror. He saw her, and he saw himself, standing there. That is all, Kaneko-chan. Mirrors have the tendency to make us think about who we are, but who are we? The mirror doesn't show us the past, and it doesn't show us the mirror. A mirror only shows us who we are at the present. I see Kaneko Tuju right now. Tomorrow you will be Kaneko Tuju, and yesterday you were Kaneko Tuju. The mirror doesn't show us how we change, it shows us. Are you proud of who you see in the mirror? Naruto asked her with a wise smile. This was part of being older, well, this was part of having been a father as well. Naruto had been a leader, a sage, a father. He had been so many things, and looked after so many people. I'm proud, but Kaneko started to say, but Naruto pinched her lips together. There is no but. You are proud. If you have insecurities, you can talk to me about them from now on. Every day when you wake up I want you to look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, am I proud? Naruto told her as he stood up. He had the mirror so that people could see what they looked like when they got here. People were always surprised about that. Of course, I also see something else in the mirror, Naruto said with his tone filled with air. What do you see, master? Kaneko asked, and Naruto waved a hand in the air. I see a girl who desperately needs a bath. I'll show you the way there, Naruto said, and Kaneko smelled herself. Raising her arm up, she smelled her pit. She didn't even notice the smell, having gone blind to her own scent. Kaneko followed Naruto thought, and he opened a door. They walked down a hallway, but Kaneko noticed that the hallway was just 2 walls of logs leading towards an open-air bath. Kaneko raised an eyebrow at Naruto. Open-air bath? Kaneko asked Naruto, and he nodded his head. We don't exactly have running water up here. So I built this. The atmosphere is nice, right? Naruto asked as he gestured to the large pool of water. It was decorated with rocks surrounding it, and Kaneko could see that the water wasn't really warm. Boil release, unrivaled strength. Naruto spoke as his skin started to emit steam, hot steam, and Naruto placed his hand in the water. Steam erupted from the once cold water, and bubbles could be seen forming, but Naruto used his other hand, and using the power of Isabu inside of him, created more water to refill all of the water lost by the steam. In seconds, the bath was filled with hot water, and steam came off of it. Wow, is that senjutsu? Kaneko asked Naruto with a twinkle in her eye, and Naruto shook his head. This is ninjutsu, not senjutsu. Like I said, no running water, no water heater. We do have a waterfall, but it isn't natural. I have somebody I knew a long time ago create it. Well, I would join you, but I am going to go and fetch you some new clothes. What sizes are you? Naruto asked her with a raised eyebrow, and he looked at her body. Kaneko turned a little red. 138 centimeters, 4 feet 6 inches, and my sizes are 67 cm, 57 cm, 73 cm, 26 inches, 22 inches, 29 inches. I have a small body, Kaneko said as she looked away from Naruto, who nodded. So she was insecure about her small figure, and how short she was. He would have to address that later, but first he would let her bath and get her some clothes. Naruto took her backpack from her. She would have no more use for it now. Will my body be a problem? Kaneko asked Naruto as he was leaving. With training? Not at all. You can leave your clothes any way you want. I doubt you will be wearing them again, Naruto said as he looked back and looked at her ruined clothes. Naruto hummed. She was rather cute. She lacked a super seductive, mature body, but she was cute in her own way. She had good hips, and she should be proud of her butt. He had no idea why she was so insecure about her body, but he would find out later. Kaneko started to strip out of her clothes as Naruto walked away, because surely he had seen naked bodies plenty in his life. Naruto even said he would have joined her were it not for the fact he had to do something. She wasn't sure how she felt about that, but she heard that skinship between master and apprentice was rather normal. It deepened the bond of trust. Master, I don't mind if you join me when you are done, Kaneko told him as she sank into the water, and hissed at how hot it was, but stayed in anyway. That is normal for students and teachers, right? Kaneko asked him. She had never been an apprentice before. I bathed together with my master, though he was more interested in being a pervert. You don't seem too bothered by it. I would like to hear why later, Naruto said as he left Kaneko to bath. Because you have a warm, sunny, bright aura. Kaneko thought the answer to herself. She had bathed together with Rias and Akino before. She had bathed with the maids of the gremmerie, so she was no stranger to shared bathing. She wasn't completely shy about her body either, she just didn't like perverts gawking at her small breasts. Kaneko wasn't 100% about bathing with Naruto, but she wasn't against it either. If she remembered, the legend said that he had children, a son and a daughter were known. He must have bathed with his daughter a few times, and he had to have had a wife that he did things with. Kaneko sighed and looked up at the sky. She could feel excitement bubbling up inside of her, and she jumped up in the bath, splashing water around her as she pumped her fists in the air. I did it! Kaneko shouted out, happy to let all of her excitement out in one go. She was made it to Master Naruto. My body has adjusted, Master, and I am ready to begin my training. Kaneko spoke as she greeted Naruto for morning breakfast. Kaneko groaned when she saw that she had steamed insects, again, while Naruto was eating ramen. She understood that it was for her training, and that insects like these were high in proteins that would let her chakra grow stronger, and her stamina get better, but she didn't like eating them. Master, why don't you eat this stuff too? Kaneko asked as she looked at his ramen with desire. She didn't understand why he was eating ramen, when she was eating bugs. I'm not training to learn senjutsu. You aren't either, not today. Your chakra control is not yet at the level I want it at. Naruto told her calmly. In the last 3 days, her body had adjusted to the thin air. That was good for her, but she had only mastered surface sticking and water walking. Her chakra control was nowhere good enough to let her learn senjutsu, and actually control the chakra. You needed excellent control to be able to control the sage chakra you formed when you learned senjutsu, and used it. It made the user's chakra more powerful, and if your control over your chakra wasn't at a certain level, you had no chance of controlling senjutsu chakra. At the level Kaneko was at with her control, she would be overwhelmed by the training. How do I increase my control? Kaneko asked as she sat down at the table, and she grimaced as she started to eat her food. She put food very loosely, and she didn't enjoy that all of her meals were bugs. It bugged her, no pun intended, that she was eating bugs, while her master was eating good-smelling food right in front of her. Naruto rolled his eyes, and he plucked a steamed cricket off her plate, before he ate it. I thought Kaneko started to say, but Naruto stopped her. See, don't grimace when you eat. This is Shima's old recipe she made for me when I was a young tadpole. You want to learn senjutsu, eat. I'll help you with your chakra control after we eat. Of course, you need a strong body for senjutsu, and a lot of stamina. Naruto lectured her, and Kaneko nodded and moved into a more comfy sitting position. She was wearing a white kimono that was for training, usually waterfall training, with a white sash around her waist. She had no pants, socks, or shoes, and the hem of the kimono ended at the same point as her miniskirt had done. Naruto was wearing his normal clothes, though he wasn't wearing his cape. Master, what is up with these clothes? Kaneko felt the need to ask, and Naruto finished off ramen and pushed his bowl away from him. I'm not going to give you something fancy, just for you to ruin it training. The color, because white looks good on you. Eat. Naruto reminded her at the end, and she returned to eating her bugs. Kaneko gagged a little as she got halfway done, and she drank a purple juice with a large bug floating inside of it. Kaneko rushed herself in eating, while Naruto went over to the door and slid it open. Kaneko's cheeks bulged. 5 minutes later. Blah. Kaneko had a trail of saliva coming out of her mouth as she tried to avoid throwing up. She was sitting on the ground, outside of the temple, and she was nearby a waterfall. Naruto was standing above her, leaning over and patting her on the back. She would have to get used to the feeling of eating bugs, just like he had. He liked the taste, but it was the way it would sometimes wiggle that grossed him out. Shima's worm soup had been really tasty, tasted just like ramen, to the point that Naruto couldn't tell the difference taste-wise. It had only been when those worms started moving that he noticed what he was eating. Kaneko would grow to not be bothered by eating bugs, at some point during her training. Don't go throwing up now, or you will have to go down to the cave and get more bugs. From now on, if you want to eat you have to go and hunt for the bugs. You will have to keep your own food supply stocked. Naruto informed her, and Kaneko groaned. That was going to be hell, going down the mountain to get bugs whenever they started to run out of bugs. It would no doubt do wonders for her stamina to go up and down those stairs a lot, but the fact of the matter was simple. It was up to her to collect the bugs that she would be eating, meaning she was going to have to hand-pick all of the bugs that would go into her belly. I understand, Master, the training? Kaneko asked him, and Naruto nodded before he tossed her a water balloon. There are several levels that require special control over chakra. Your chakra won't let you learn ninjutsu that require those, but you can learn techniques that require nothing more than pure chakra control and manipulation. At the moment, your chakra control is at maybe a C rank. I need it at an A rank before I can teach you senjutsu. So, I am going to teach you the stages of an A rank jutsu in difficulty to get your chakra control where it needs to be. Naruto instructed her, and Kaneko looked at the water balloon in her hand in confusion. A rank sounded pretty powerful, and very hard, but she had no idea how this was supposed to make her more powerful, or get her control better. I'm a C rank in control? Kaneko asked, and Naruto nodded. You mastered water walking, a more advanced version of surface sticking, but that isn't anything special during my time. Only 6 people have ever learned this jutsu, though, is how hard it is. Naruto told Kaneko, and he pulled out a second water balloon. Naruto held it out towards her, and she watched it. It bubbled on the surface, before it popped, and she saw small streams of yellow chakra coming out of it, before those vanished as well. How did you do that? Kaneko asked with wide eyes. She had sensed chakra, but she didn't know how he did it. You have to figure it out yourself, but I can teach you a little. Everyone's chakra rotates differently. You rotate to the left. Naruto told her, and he started to walk off. Kaneko looked at him, and then at the water balloon. This is the ultimate form of the advanced chakra control known as shape manipulation. If you pop the balloon anyway, but the way I did it, you didn't get it. Naruto told her, and he continued to walk off. When he was gone, Kaneko looked at the balloon. Rotation? This seems useless. Big deal. What use at popping water balloons? How can this lead to a powerful technique, or making my control better? Kaneko scoffed to herself. She put her chakra into the balloon, before she started to rotate it to the left. The water balloon started to stretch, and it started to spin like a disc. It did not pop though, it became thinner, but it did not pop. It returned back to its normal shape, and Kaneko frowned, before she tried again. She got it to form the disc shape, but nothing more than that. She couldn't get it to bubble and pop. Kaneko put her chakra into the balloon, and this time she more quickly spun the water. She spun it as fast as she could do, and she tried to make the spinning increase in speed faster. All she managed to do was make it go flat faster than before it returned back to the way it was before. Kaneko looked at the balloon, before she grit her teeth. This is a little harder than I thought it would be. How did he do that? Kaneko thought to herself. She had chakra, and Naruto said that all you needed was chakra control to do this. This was a ninjutsu that could potentially be used by anyone with chakra. Apparently, he was right, her chakra control was good, but not at the level that he needed it, or she wanted it, to be at. Kaneko-chan, let's see how well you deal with this. Naruto thought as he sat on top of the temple and watched as Kaneko got frustrated with a water balloon. Hiya! Kaneko shouted out as she put a lot of chakra into the water, and she started to spin it the second she put it in. It flattened out, and it did spin, but when it popped, Kaneko frowned. It didn't bubble. She grabbed another balloon from the basket of balloons, and she took a stance to start again. She rotated her chakra to the left inside of her body, and let it travel into the balloon. This time, it popped again, but it was more like a drill popping the balloon. It had stabbed the balloon, and only one part of the balloon bubbled, instead of the entire thing. Kaneko glared at the next balloon, before she started to do it again. Kaneko tossed the remains of the next balloon aside, and she grabbed another one, before she held it in her hand. Are you sure there isn't anything else you can tell me? Kaneko shouted up to Naruto, who looked down at her. Your chakra control won't improve if I tell you everything. The best way to learn this is to learn it with your body. You have to GAH it, and then BM it. Naruto answered her, and Kaneko looked up at him with a dull look. She had no idea what that meant, but obviously it meant something. Naruto lay back on the roof, and he didn't say anything else, and Kaneko looked back at the water balloon. With my body ga bam? Kaneko questioned as she looked at the balloon, and she looked at her body. How was she supposed to learn this with her body? Ga! Kaneko shouted as she rotated her chakra inside of the balloon, and it didn't even pop this time. She didn't know what type of tip Master Naruto had given her, but if he said it, then it must be true. Kaneko felt the water in the balloon still rotating, even though she wasn't spinning her chakra anymore. She could feel it in the palm of her hand, and she could judge the water itself. She could feel it with her hand, but did that count as feeling it with her body? Bubbles appeared in multiple spots, don't just rotate it in one direction. So long as the rotation is to the left, you change the formation in any way. Naruto thought as he watched her. Kaneko popped the balloon, but she didn't do it correctly. Kaneko grabbed another balloon, before she took up the same boxing stance she had been doing. Ga! Kaneko shouted as she tried to pop it again, and she stopped and scrunched her face up. She sat the balloon down, before she held her hand out. She did the same time as before, and she saw a spiral of chakra floating above her hand. Ga! Kaneko shouted, and she watched as the chakra spun faster than before. Well, she is trying to see what the chakra inside the balloon is doing. She is trying to figure this out on her own. Naruto thought with a little more interest. The water balloon was a tool, but it wasn't actually needed. So long as you learned to spin it in multiple directions, you didn't actually need the balloon. With my body? Kaneko questioned herself as she looked at the spiral floating above her hand, and she started to rotate her body along with it. She moved her hips in a circle, while she moved her upper body in the opposite direction. Kaneko did this, and she tried to keep the spiral above her hand stable. She moved her body like a spiral, and she could feel the motions her body caused. It didn't clue her into the secret behind the water balloon popping trick though, but she did lose control over the chakra spiral. It went unstable, and came apart in multiple directions. Chakra touched her hand in multiple spots, and Kaneko blinked. Oh ho! Naruto thought as Kaneko picked up the water balloon, and she started to rotate her chakra again. This time though, she stopped rotating in one direction, and added a second direction. Kaneko grit her teeth, but lost control over the chakra as she rotated it. I figured it out, Kaneko said as she looked up at Naruto, who looked down at her. Correct, you rotate the chakra in enough directions. The water pops the balloon from the inside, but is your control high enough to rotate it in so many directions at once? Naruto asked Kaneko with a raised eyebrow. Kaneko frowned, and she took up her stance again. She got 2 directions down, but that was it. It wasn't enough for her to pop the balloon, she couldn't control more than 2 spirals at the same time. She popped the balloon, but she didn't do it the right way again. She scrunched up her face, and she picked up the next water balloon. Ga! Kaneko shouted out, and she was starting to get the hint that Naruto gave her. She was supposed to wildly release the chakra in all directions, but keep it rotated. Kaneko put her chakra into the balloon in multiple directions, but she forgot to make it into a spiral shape when she did it. She couldn't make so many streams of chakra and keep them rotating at the same time. Several hours later. I'm out of balloons, Kaneko said as she looked towards Naruto, who placed another basket of water balloons on the ground. Popping the balloon and making it bam were different things. She put holes in them that made them pop, but she didn't make them explode. Naruto grabbed a balloon before he held out both of his hands. In his free hand, he had wild chakra streaming and spinning in random directions at the same time, completely uncontrolled. In the other hand, he popped the balloon. I told you, this is harder than it looks. You have to shape the chakra into a spiral, control it, and make it take shape in many directions. You can keep going, but it will be night soon and you don't have enough chakra left to do this, Naruto said as he looked at her, and she nodded her head. She had expended most of her chakra already. This training was a lot harder than she gave it credit for. She would have to continue tomorrow. Yes, Kaneko started to say, before Naruto gave her a basket. Now, go down to the cave and collect bugs. Then, you will clean the bath and take a bath, before washing your clothes and eating dinner, Naruto told her, and Kaneko looked surprised. She was already tired, but he was telling her to go on a several-hour trip down to the cave, and then come back up. It would be midnight before she returned from that, and she would be super exhausted. Well, if you want to eat, go and get your food, Naruto told her, and Kaneko strapped the basket to her back. Yes, master, I understand. Is there anything else? Kaneko asked Naruto, who shook his head at her. If you just train your chakra control, your body will get weak. If you just train your body, your chakra control will lower. You have to maintain both. Work hard, Kaneko-chan, because this is the easy part of your training, Naruto told her, and she gulped visibly. She didn't like the sound of that. Easy? Kaneko asked with eyes wide, and Naruto nodded to her. Yes, easy, but don't worry. Once you get used to that, I will make things even harder for you, Naruto assured her, and Kaneko nodded her head. She wasn't going to complain after making it this far. Kaneko allowed the hot water to flow over her entire body. She was sunken at the bottom of the bath, looking up as she held her breath. Kaneko had been working for nearly a week on the first stage, and she still wasn't any closer to finishing it than she was when she learned how to swirl in multiple directions. Naruto was right, her chakra control was only a C rank, when she needed it to be at a B rank just to complete the first stage. To complete all of the stages, she would need her chakra control to be at the A rank. The most progress she had made was adding a fourth layer of swirling chakra, but other than that, she was no closer to popping the balloon correctly. There were water balloons floating in the water around her. How am I supposed to master such an advanced form of chakra control? If I could use both of my hands, then I could do it, but I can't do that, Kaneko thought with a frown. Naruto had popped the balloon with one hand, so she couldn't use two hands. That wouldn't be popping it the correct way, she was sure of that. Kaneko put her hand in front of her face, and she created several spiraling streams of chakra. The water spun in unison with her chakra, and she could feel the water moving. Using her other hand, she formed more spirals, and she started to place them together with the spirals she made with her other hand. If she could use both hands, it would be much easier for her to do. Kaneko leaned up, her head coming out of the water, and she took a breath. She was still trying to feel it with her body, so she had submerged herself in water to try and feel how it was inside of the balloon. Having some trouble? Naruto asked from nearby, and he was laying back with his feet in the water, a towel around his waist. She hadn't even noticed him get in. Why is this so hard? Kaneko asked with a frown at her own lack of progress, and Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Oh, you already realized the answer, you just haven't realized it yet. At the rate you are going, you won't be finished with this part until next year, Naruto told her, and he looked at her back. She had a small back, but she seemed to tense up. I already realized the answer? Kaneko asked Naruto as she turned her head towards him, and she made sure to look into his eyes. The only thing she had realized was that she could do it with two hands, but that wasn't the one hand that Naruto had showed her. Kaneko didn't turn anything other than her head, but she could see that Naruto wasn't really paying much attention to her body. He was paying more attention to a book in his hands, that had pictures of people in it, with different shapes and sizes to their body. You aren't used to controlling your chakra. You went most of your life without using it. You went from not drinking water to drinking from a bucket. You think you can suddenly hold all that water in your belly? Naruto asked her with a raised eyebrow. She needed a crutch to let her catch up at her own rate. His thing as a child was that he had such a crazy amount of chakra that it had been impossible to normally control. Konohamaru did not have that excuse, he just had bad chakra control. Kaneko had a relatively large reserve of chakra, despite being a female. That wasn't a sexist statement, females usually had much smaller reserves, but better control over those reserves. Kaneko was an odd case, she had larger chakra reserves, and good control, but she was not used to controlling it. How do I fix it? Kaneko asked him, and Naruto rolled his eyes. Experience. How long have you been using your chakra? A little over a month now. Give it some time, and you will be a pro. Kaneko, come over here and lay down. I'm going to help you out. Naruto told Kaneko as he placed his hand down next to himself. Kaneko gained a little pink on her cheeks, but she did obey him. Kaneko laid on her stomach though, and Naruto put the book next to her body, and she saw the body of a young girl on the page he was turned to. The girl was naked, but she had lines and points placed on her body, with the lines looking similar to veins, but they weren't veins. The girl's body was about the same size and shape as her body. Now that she thought about it, each body was different, and had sizes and ages that were different. What are you going to do? Kaneko asked Naruto, and he looked out some needs and lifted her arm up. Naruto stuck the needle in her arm, and Kaneko winced when she felt it stab her. You don't have chakra pathways like me, but you do have tenketsu. These places are where you release your chakra when you use it. If I had the Byakugan, this would be a lot easier, so I have to make do with a book. Naruto said as he looked between the book and Kaneko's body. He poked her in the arms and several more places, before he poked a few into her back. Kaneko winced with each poke. It felt like she had less chakra than before. What is this supposed to do? Kaneko asked, and Naruto gave her a water balloon. Kaneko looked at it, before she lifted her hand up, though she was struggling with the needles still inside of her body. Pop. With less chakra, it is easier to control. Is it easier to rotate your chakra now? Naruto asked a surprised Kaneko, and she nodded her head as she looked at the balloon in surprise. Naruto took the needles out of her arms, before he gave her another water balloon. Oh, and that doesn't count. Now you know what it feels like to have better control, so reach that point with hard work. Naruto told her, and she groaned. She figured it wouldn't count, since her chakra control didn't actually improve. Why did you do that though? Though I had to learn this myself. Kaneko questioned what he did, and she covered her chest with her hand as she slipped back into the water. You already know what it feels like to rotate your chakra. Heck, your chakra control is good enough to pass this part. If you have an idea that will let you pop the balloon, then go ahead and do it. Naruto told her, and Kaneko blinked as she looked at him. Naruto had never told her that she couldn't use two hands. Using two hands was just as good as using one hand, and Naruto knew that she had figured out the two-hand trick. But Kaneko said, and Naruto rolled his eyes. With experience, even if it takes you two hands today, it will one day take one hand. I was the same. Go ahead, pop a balloon with two hands. Naruto said, and Kaneko took another balloon out of the water. She placed both of her hands on the balloon, and the balloon popped. She looked at it with annoyance, since it took her two hands to do something like this. Good, tomorrow you can start the next step. Now go get your bugs. Naruto told her as he held out a towel for her to wrap her body with. She gladly took it, and she stood up before wrapping herself with the towel. Wouldn't it be better if I waited until I could do it with one hand? Kaneko asked Naruto, who glanced at her, and he shrugged his shoulders. I don't think you want to be stuck on the first stage for several months. So long as your chakra control gets better than it was before, then fine. Naruto told her, and she started to walk away, drying her body off. Kaneko lifted her slightly numb arms up, and she could see red marks from where she had been poked and stabbed. Her chakra felt funny going through her arms, but she would deal with it. I look forward to tomorrow's training. Kaneko told Naruto, and he nodded before he smiled at her. If you can finish the second step in a week, I am thinking about rewarding you. You worked hard, good job, Kaneko-chan. Naruto said, and Kaneko looked back to see him grinning at her. She smiled to herself, proud that she had been told good job. It made the fact that she used two hands to pass the test seem minor. Master, thank you? Kaneko said to Naruto, and she walked off. She stripped the towel from her body, before she grabbed her kimono and put it on. She wrapped the obi loosely around her waist, and she pulled her panties up her legs. She shouldn't question Naruto. If he said that she was ready for the next step, then she should not worry herself over it. It meant she was ready, though her control could still use some work. He told her she would get better with experience. Kaneko looked at the basket of water balloons, before she picked it up, and she strapped the bug basket onto her back. Kaneko ran towards the stairs leading down to the bug cave, before she started to train herself. Her master might have said that she was ready for the next step, but she would practice the first step until she had it down. She wanted to make him proud, and finishing the first step would do just that. Kaneko-chan, you made me very proud. Naruto spoke as she showed him a popped water balloon, and he rubbed the top of her head. She smiled up at him, slightly pink cheeks, and enjoyed the glow that came with knowing she did a job well done. He gave her that serious/goofy grin as always, and she knew that she couldn't be any more proud of herself as well. Kaneko pat her cheek softly to wake herself up from her daydream. I need to focus, Kaneko said as she started to walk down the stairs. She needed to think of the bugs that she was going to get. Naruto had a recipe for every type of bug in that cave, but Kaneko had bugs that she just preferred not to eat, period. She didn't eat anything with more than 6 legs, so no spiders. She disliked worms when they wiggled, so she would avoid those if she could. Sadly, she couldn't be too picky, because Naruto had a point: she had more stamina since she started to eat the bugs. She had been able to continue training longer than she normally could, so that was a plus. Kaneko blinked before she groaned. She didn't think she would ever get used to eating bugs, and to think, her true training hadn't even started. She was just preparing for her training by increasing her control. Once that was where it needed to be, she would really be needing this extra stamina. Kaneko shivered at the thought of how hard the senjutsu training would really be. Kaneko looked at the balloon in her hand, before she smiled to herself. She wouldn't give up, just because the training was going to be hard. How hard could it possibly be? Training was stage 2 by day, and trying to master stage 1 by night. She is going to burn herself out, and experience chakra exhaustion or just simply exhaustion. Naruto thought as he stood nearby Kaneko. She couldn't see him, and she couldn't sense him. Well, she couldn't sense him even without this technique. Naruto knew that if she saw him, she would quit what she was doing right away and go to bed. He was using the transparent escape technique, taught to him by his own teacher Jiraiya, to watch over her to make sure she didn't kill herself. Though Naruto hated being invisible, as a loud attention seeker, being unseen was against his personality. He knew he had to watch her. He was her master, a role he took more seriously than he let on with his casual attitude. Kaneko, in the last few days, was working herself harder than she had before. She was getting only a few hours of sleep a night, and that wasn't going to cut it. Her progress was amazing though. She was close to mastering the first stage with one hand, but she was nowhere close to even beginning mastering the second stage. Ha, got to try again, Kaneko said as she held her hand in front of her, with a water balloon in her hand. Kaneko grit her teeth, sweat pouring off of her face as she did so. She generated chakra, and she stated to swirl it inside of the balloon. It started to bubble on the surface before it popped. Kaneko smiled widely at her success, before she tossed the remains of the water balloon aside. She pulled out a rubber ball next. So, she is going to train at the second stage at night as well, Naruto thought, since he had shown it to her a few days ago. What you did was focus on pure power this time, and make the force of the spirals as strong and dense as possible. It took a lot of chakra and control to make your chakra more dense, but it was worth it. Naruto had not given her a single clue, because she didn't ask for one this time. He showed her how to pop the rubber ball, gave her one, and then he left it to her to figure out how to burst it. At the moment, she was trying to do what she did with the water balloon. She couldn't feel the water though, since there was no water inside of there to spin. So, not only did she had to compensate for the lack of water, but she also had to increase the power further to use pure rotation power and speed to burst rubber. Kaneko started to use both of her hands, before she generated enough chakra that her hair started to wave around. The rubber ball bulged, but it made no visible sign that it was about to pop. How do you pop? Kaneko asked the rubber ball with a glare towards it, and she gripped her fists. She almost popped it that way, but she calmed herself down. If she let her danger get the better of her, she wouldn't be able to concentrate on her task. Kaneko held the rubber ball closer to the ground, taking up a stance, and she started to palm thrust the ball in multiple places in quick succession. Ayayawaya! Kaneko shouted out, as quietly as she could considering she was shouting. Let's see what you can figure out on your own, Naruto thought with a grin on his invisible face. Nothing once more. Kaneko didn't pop it this time either. She didn't even puncture it this time, like she had a few times when she did day training. Naruto shook his head before he ended his technique, becoming visible. Naruto vanished in a burst of speed, and Kaneko didn't even notice as he appeared behind her. Aya! Kaneko started to shout out, but she was stopped. Her eyes went dull when Naruto chopped the back of her neck, and he caught her before she hit the ground. She still kept a firm grip on the rubber ball, but she was clearly knocked out cold. Naruto carried her bridal style, and she curled up into his chest, her eyes now closed. Naruto used one arm to hold her, and he used the other hand to rub the back of his head. Well, you managed to do the first stage with one hand through sheer, stubborn effort, Naruto said with amusement in his voice. Kaneko was pretty close to chakra exhaustion, so he ended her midnight training there. He knocked her out, because it was the best way to make sure that she didn't pretend to sleep and go back to midnight training. Naruto wasn't a fool. He had noticed the first night she started to do this, but he had simply been interested in watching her and making sure she didn't hurt herself too badly. He would confront her about it tomorrow for sure. I pulled the same thing when I taught myself to throw the raisin shuriken. I stayed up late at night and practiced in secret as well past when Pa fell asleep, Naruto thought with a proud smile. Sadly, Kaneko didn't have his chakra reserves, and she needed more sleep to regain what she lost. She also needed to make sure to get good rest anyway, since she was a growing girl. If she pushed herself too hard, she would stunt her growth, and if she stunted her growth, she would also make it harder for herself to grow stronger. Naruto got to the bedroom, and he sat Kaneko down on a mat, and he pulled a cover up over her body. Kaneko's hand grabbed onto his pants, and he looked down at her. Naruto sat down on the ground, before she crawled into his lap in her sleep. Naruto rubbed the top of her head, a small smile on his face. He would wait until she was in a really deep sleep before he left, or he would just stay and let her sleep in his lap like this. He didn't mind too much, she was training hard, even on her own. She was really like a kitten like this, just like her name said, and just like her race suggested. Kaneko wasn't ashamed of her race, she was afraid of senjutsu and the power inside of her. It would be hard for her when the actual senjutsu training came along. Her sister had went about learning senjutsu incorrectly, and that had scarred Kaneko on the inside. Master Kaneko moaned in her sleep, and Naruto sighed and rubbed the back of his head awkwardly. It was almost never not awkward to hear somebody mention you in their sleep. Wonder what she is dreaming about, Naruto asked himself, and Kaneko smiled in her sleep. Kaneko's dream. Master, is it delicious? Kaneko asked as she stood next to Naruto, and he was eating ramen that she had made herself for him. She noticed he really liked ramen, so she had made a point to make some for him. Naruto blew on it, before he slurped some up, and he reached out and rubbed her forehead, and the top of her head. He could fit a lot of her head in his hand, but she enjoyed it regardless, and she blushed a little with a happy smile on her face. It is great, Kaneko-chan. I'm glad I made you my student. You don't have to eat bugs anymore, from now on, I'll feed you myself, Naruto said as he used the chopsticks to feed Kaneko some of the ramen. She cried tears of joy, no more bugs for her. Thank you, Master. When I'm done with my training, will you come back to Ko with me? I don't want to be apart from you. I want to be your real apprentice, Kaneko asked him, and Naruto seemed to think about it teasingly. He put a finger to his lip, before he grinned at her. I don't see why not, Naruto told her, and Kaneko tried to feed Naruto, but she spilled some ramen on his shirt. I'm sorry, Master. Kaneko apologized right away. Naruto smiled at her, before he started to take his wet shirt off. Kaneko turned deep red. Even though she had seen it before, she never actually paid attention to it. No, this was the first time she had seen his body wet. His abs, his pecs, his arms. All of them were muscular, and all of them were harder than steel itself. You could quite literally rub a block of cheese on his abs, and expect that the cheese would break off into pieces. It was wet now, and she could see it shining. Her face was mere feet away from his body, and even with the bandages on his right arm, she was not turned away. Well damn, I guess I will have to wipe this off, Naruto said, and Kaneko stopped him, leaning closer. I'll do it, Kaneko said, and her face started to get closer to his abs. She stuck her tongue out, preparing to lick the juices off of him. Her tongue got closer and closer, until she was mere centimeters away from tasting him. Aya! Kaneko shouted as she woke up from her dream. Kaneko looked around, and she saw that she must have fallen asleep. The last thing she remembered was completing the first stage, and getting started on the second stage. Then it went black, so she assumed that she had simply passed out, and Naruto might have found her and returned her to where she was now under the assumption of sleepwalking. That was a horrible dream. I'm not a pervert, Kaneko reminded herself as she beat herself over the head. You aren't? That is too bad, perverts are pretty honest people, Naruto said, and Kaneko turned beet red when she saw that he was in the same room as her. Master! I didn't, Kaneko started, before Naruto held his hand out. No training today. You are going to spend today recovering from your little night training. Anyway, you have a nice dream? That doesn't make you a bad pervert. Naruto told her with a laid-back tone. She wasn't going to train today, thanks to the fact he could sense her body needed to rest a day before her chakra was fully recovered. If she tried to train, she would pass out after a few hours of work. Bad pervert? Kaneko asked, and Naruto nodded. Everyone is a pervert, Kaneko-chan. Well, everyone except people with zero sexual feelings. Anyway, a good pervert is respectful about it, or at least they respect the people they perv on. They settle down, and they focus their perversions on the one they love. Being a little bit perverted here and there is healthy. Young boys peeking, and young girls lusting, all normal, within reason. Naruto said the definition of a healthy or good pervert. There was a difference between being simply healthy and perverted, and being unhealthy about it. What about the bad? Kaneko asked, and Naruto let out a small chuckle. A pervert that hurts people, lusts after somebody even when they are in love, and isn't faithful. Somebody who stalks people, forces themselves on others. If you hurt somebody with your perversion, you are a bad pervert. Those are the perverts who don't need to even breed. Of course, there is another type of pervert. Naruto said to her, and Kaneko raised an eyebrow. Good and bad, she was pretty sure those were the only two types there were. What type? Kaneko asked, and Naruto pointed to himself. A battle pervert, somebody who uses perversion as a weapon in battle. This type of pervert uses other people's perversion. Most of these perverts classify as a good pervert. I'm pretty sure you aren't a bad one, Kaneko. So don't worry about it too much. Naruto comforted her, since she seemed to have a serious dislike for perverts. It was natural, most people couldn't tell the difference between good and bad. If somebody got physically or emotionally hurt, then that was a bad one, but if nobody got hurt, then there was no harm in a little perversion. So it is okay? Kaneko asked Naruto, a little unsure of if it was okay for her to have the dream she had. Of course, and your race goes into heat, so it is more normal for you. Your race is very sexual in nature. You will become a little more perverted when you fall in love. Naruto said to her. He had dealt with Nekishu before, and he rubbed the top of her head. She seemed uncomfortable with the thought of going into heat. Naruto noticed this. If it is about heat, you shouldn't feel bad about it. You can only go into heat when you are sexually mature enough. Well, technically you could go into heat now. You might be small, but you have matured. Naruto spoke for her, not wanting to lie. Her body was small, and it seemed immature, but just because she was petite, didn't mean that she was incapable of giving birth or having sex. Sexual maturity and being womanly were very different things. Master, what if my dreams involved you? Kaneko asked, and Naruto blinked, before he laughed a little into his hand. Kaneko looked offended and heartbroken that he would laugh at her feelings, at first, before Naruto rubbed the top of her head. What is so funny? Kaneko asked, and Naruto snorted, before calming down. I am very flattered, Kaneko-chan. It makes me feel good knowing you find me attractive. Don't worry about it, because you can't control your dreams. I won't hate you for having a sex dream about me, or think any less of you. Naruto told her with a soft smile. Kaneko smiled at him, feeling a lot better than he didn't think less of her. She had thought that he would be disgusted with her, but she couldn't hide it from him either. Thank you, Master. Can I make you ramen today? Kaneko asked Naruto, and he blinked in surprise, before he nodded his head. Sure, since you won't be training today, I won't make you eat bugs either. Naruto said, and he pat her back, before standing up fully. Well, you relax? Part of training is knowing when to take a break. Naruto told Kaneko, and she nodded to him. She would listen to his advice. Training would continue tomorrow. That is one way to make ramen? Naruto thought as he looked towards Kaneko and the unique way she worked the ramen noodles. Normally, most people would use their hands and molded the eggs into the ramen. Not Kaneko though. Instead of using her hands, Kaneko had placed the dough on the table. Naruto had never seen this unique method before now, which was interesting. It had been a long time since something surprised him. Hup 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 hup. Kaneko panted as she stomped with her feet on the table. Instead of her hands, she used her feet to pound the dough. She was cute about it, though her kimono skirt was flipping with each movement, showing Naruto her panties. Today she had gone with the cute white ones with a heart in front of her crotch. She didn't seem bothered by the fact she was constantly and continuously flashing him her panties, and if she kept this up it would wedge and she would show him something else. At least her feet were clean, she wiped them off after she got on the table, so she who was Naruto kidding, This was still weird no matter how he cut it. She was cooking using her feet. Kaneko-chan, why your feet? Naruto asked with a look at her moving. It was weird looking up at her. Normally he looked down at her, since she was about crotch level with him. It was strange to be on the other end of that, where he was looking directly into her crotch. Rias-sama taught this to me. Kaneko admitted to him, and Naruto shrugged. He didn't understand devils, nor did he understand fallen angels. The race he most understood were the angels, though he had some ideas that they didn't quite agree with. Naruto enjoyed fighting, training, and battle. Naruto wanted to fight strong opponents, and he wanted to raise strong opponents as well, and see them grow into strong fighters. He didn't understand the culture of the other races, who he frankly did not have much contact with. He mostly dealt with yokai, seeing as he sent them dreams about senjutsu, so that they could find Sage Mountain. He somewhat understood yokai culture, but he mostly dealt with Nekomata, Nekashu, and the other races who were closer to nature, and found senjutsu to be more natural to them. I think I would like to meet this Rias girl. She deserves to be hit for thinking it is okay to use your feet on ramen, Naruto said with a twitching eye. He was going to track this girl down, and teach her like he taught his own kids. You did not disrespect ramen by stepping on it. He was only letting Kaneko without hitting her because he was curious about it, and it wasn't her fault this was how she was taught to cook. He hoped this tasted good. She told me people like the taste of a beautiful young girl's feet. Humans are supposed to be really perverted, but I guess Kaneko said, and she looked down at her own hands. She was a pervert as well, and she was only going to get more perverted. That thought disgusted her, even though she knew it was only natural to feel things like lust. She wanted to go back to the times when she lacked lust, and had zero sex drive. Too bad for her, she had sensed a supremely powerful man, a very kind, loving man who spent the time to teach her, correct her, and allow her to grow. Somebody who understood her. Say no more. Though, I think she might have been taught incorrectly. That foot thing is more of a fetish than an actual common thing. You do have cute feet, but then again, that doesn't mean I want to eat food you stepped on. Naruto reasoned with her as he watched her stepping on the dough, just stomping it with moderate force. Master, have you ever fallen in love? Kaneko asked, hoping that the randomness of her question would surprise Naruto into answering it. I fall in love all the time. I love all my friends, and all my students. I love the animals and plants on this island, but romantic love only once. Naruto told her with a small smile at the memory. Kaneko continued to press her feet into the dough, and it was nearly flattened across the entire table. Hinata was her name. I tell you, I would go to the moon and back for my wife. I actually did that. Together we stopped the moon from crashing and saved the world. We have 2 children together, Boruto and Himawari. Man, do I miss them. We shared our first kiss, flying in the sky with the moon in the background. Naruto told Kaneko, and she stopped moving her feet and looked into Naruto's eyes. He went to the moon and back, literally, for a woman he loved, and saved the world together with her. Suddenly, there really seemed to be no man that could compete with Naruto in her mind. What man could go to the moon and back for his woman? That was the most romantic gesture you could make to somebody. She sounds important to you. Kaneko pointed out to him, and he nodded. In a world filled with women who would die to be with me, she was the one that stood out the most. She was the only one special to me in that way. She was also the only one who supported me becoming immortal. Everyone else was against it, but she knew and trusted I was doing what was right. Naruto said with a bright smile. She had given her unconditional support. Everyone else knew he would one day regret taking it upon himself to look after the future, and raise the future generations of sages who would prevent the Shinju from bearing fruit again. She sounds amazing. Have you ever tried falling in love again? Kaneko asked, and she was startled when she realized that she was finished with her stomping. Kaneko hopped off of the table, and started to roll up the noodles, before she took out the noodle maker and fed the dough through it. I haven't tried, but I'm not against it. I know my Hinata, and she would want me to find love again. As long as I'm happy, I know she is looking down upon me with a smile from the Pure Land. Naruto said with a calm smile. Ninja didn't go to the same place as others did, instead they went to the Pure Land. The evildoers went right to the Shinigami stomach, while those who did good things, or at least were good people at the end of their life, went to the Pure Land. So did your wife have big? Kaneko tried to ask, wondering if Naruto was a big boob fan, or liked them smaller. Breasts? Yeah, record breakers. Close to 104 centimeters, and they were very soft, and elastic. Didn't bounce as much though since she wore tight clothes. Made them look smaller than they were. She used to always complain about how they floated when we bathed together. I think Hinata would have liked to be smaller. Naruto laughed as he remembered the complaints his wife had about her breasts. Kaneko perked up with pride when she heard the complaints about big breasts, and how Naruto seemed to just find it funny. How did you feel about them? Kaneko asked as she finished turning the dough into noodles, and she put them in a pot to cook for a while. I didn't really care. So long as Hinata was happy with her chest, I was happy. Big, small, I really don't have a preference. I had a crush on a girl who went her entire life without ever getting a chest larger than your chest is now, Naruto told Kaneko, who silently nodded her head with pride. It was good for her to know that Naruto didn't seem to have a preference towards chest size. Of course, both Sakura-chan and Hinata had pretty nice waists and butts, Naruto noted with a laugh. Kaneko pat herself on the butt, and she touched her lean waist. The things she beat even Rias and Akino in were her lean waist and her tight butt. Those were the parts of herself that she had the most pride in. What is with these questions though? They seem to focus on breasts. Is this about your insecurity? Naruto asked her, and Kaneko paused for a moment before she pat her chest with a grimace. A little. Can I be honest? All the people I hang around with have huge boobs. I always feel kind of very small when I'm around them. All the guys seem to just stare at them, and only the lilicons stare at me, Kaneko admitted to Naruto, who raised an eyebrow. Only lilicons? That is weird. I was thinking you would be popular with the guys since you are cute. Frankly, you wouldn't look very good with big breasts. You have a beautiful face, it really makes you look more mature, Naruto told her as he peeked towards the ramen noodles. He was more interested in those than about the conversation right now. Well, I'm short and flat. So people mistake me for a child, Kaneko admitted with a frown. Well, that is stupid. You can't judge a person's age by their body. What about petite midgets? They are short and thin, heck, some of them have no chest. If anything, you are just on the short side, Naruto stated with a wave of his hand. I mean, I was a total runt for the longest time, Naruto admitted with a shiver. Kaneko looked interested in that. You were small? Kaneko asked, and Naruto nodded. Yeah, shortest one in my class. Even Hinata was taller than me by like an inch. I hated when people would mock me. I understand your pain, Naruto spoke with a nod. Kaneko nodded back to him, because she was very familiar with that pain. Naruto was just glad that he grew up to be the tallest person of his class, and of his general age group as well. Short people unite, so you've never found love? Never tried to start a family again? Kaneko asked him. He was an amazing person, how could he have not found love? It wasn't really love. It was one of my students. She was a yukai, like you, and she went into heat. She loved me, but I didn't feel the same. She was suffering though, and it hurt me a lot to see her suffer. So I had sex with her to help her. She became pregnant, and I did want to be there, but she didn't want anyone to know her child was a half-breed. She respected the fact I didn't love her in that way, and as much as it pained me, I stayed out of her life, Naruto told Kaneko, and Kaneko looked down at the ground. That was sad, really sad, not even being able to visit your own child. Naruto might not have loved this fling in the romantic way, but he loved her as a student and put her needs above what he wanted. Mating during mating season had a high chance of pregnancy. Did you ever see your child? Kaneko asked Naruto, and he nodded his head. Sometimes I use senjutsu to watch over her. Kind of ironic that I of all people who father a Ninetales. My grandchild is nearly old enough to learn senjutsu. Actually, Naruto noted to himself. His daughter had a daughter of her own. Kaneko looked at Naruto, before she rubbed her arm. Then again, I doubt she knows who I am in relation to her. As long as they are happy though, I will be happy for them. Naruto spoke with a pure smile, his heart going out for them. Master, you are too pure and bright. You have the warmest heart I have ever seen, so warm I can feel it. You deserve love too, Kaneko thought, before she took the noodles out of the pot and poured broth into bowls with the noodles. She sat one in front of Naruto, and one in front of herself. It looked pretty good. It looked divine to Kaneko, who had been eating bugs for a while, and nothing else but bugs. Let's dig in, Kaneko-chan. Oh, and let me tell you this, Kaneko-chan. If you are feeling insecure about something, you can tell me. I won't laugh at you. I had a daughter before, so I've dealt with a lot of stuff, and let me tell you, those were awkward days. Naruto laughed out as he finished that. Man, he remembered the days that Himawari would try and get closer to him. He wasn't always at home, so she would come to his office and talk with him when he ate lunch. She would forge a bond by talking about her problems and asking him for advice. He was sure that Hinata would have given better advice about girl stuff than him, but she went to him because she wanted his advice. Awkward? Kaneko asked, and Naruto nodded. I gave her the sex talk, and talked with her about her womanly needs. I had to talk with her when she had her first wet dream. She thought she peed the bed. Oh, don't get me started on potty training, those were scary days. Who knew such little people could make so much poop? Naruto asked as he remembered Boruto and Himawari's potty training. Those were horrible days to be a parent, and even worse days to have an extremely sensitive smell. Kaneko laughed a little at Naruto's comical complaints. Then she took a bite of the ramen, and she decided she was going to savor this. She wouldn't be allowed to eat another non-bug meal until her training was over. She needed to enjoy this, memorize it, and forever have the taste etched into her taste buds. Naruto blinked when he tried it himself. It tasted different than what he normally ate. He could taste the fact she used her feet to press it, but that didn't make the flavor bad. It added its own twist to it, and made it taste different, but not bad. It was actually pretty good, not mind-blowingly good to where he wanted to have this always, but pretty good. How is it? Kaneko asked, and Naruto smiled at her. Really good, you did really well, Kaneko-chan. Good job, Naruto said as he rubbed the top of her head, and she leaned into his rubbing. Thank you, master. Kaneko thanked him for his praise. She was going to get him to praise her even more, but next time, she would do it by impressing him with her hard work at training. Enjoy this meal, Kaneko-chan, because tomorrow, back to bugs and training, Naruto said to her, and Kaneko smiled, and she nodded. She would make him proud. How do I even do this? Kaneko asked Naruto as she tried to pop the rubber ball. She only had 2 days left before the week was up, and in those 2 days she wanted to finish popping the ball and get her reward from Naruto. Yet, for all of her progress, she was barely making any progress. She was making her chakra denser and compacting it into the ball, but that wasn't popping it. Her hands were covered in dense chakra burns, and when she would reach the level of chakra needed to pop it, the pain in her hands would overwhelm her. How was she supposed to do that, without suffering from burning herself with her own chakra? So far, the closest she had gotten was making a hole in the ball. Even then, that was not popping it. She needed to burst it in one go, not fill it with holes. She had no clue what she was supposed to do that would let her avoid hurting herself in the process. She was even using 2 hands for the rubber ball. How do you do what? You need to be a little more exact, Naruto informed her, as he closed the book he was reading. He quite literally had the entire Hokage library to read, and had taken all of the books. That library was the biggest one in Konoha, and had a ton of secret techniques. Naruto never tried learning them, but having knowledge of them couldn't hurt. Naruto knew his own strength, and he knew if he exerted enough strength to actually grow stronger from the point he was at now, it would drastically change a lot of the universe. He could not risk destroying so much stuff for a selfish desire to get stronger. So he simply trained to keep his skills fresh, instead of growing stronger. How do you pop the balloon, without burning yourself? Kaneko asked, and Naruto looked towards her hands. You burned yourself because you were training so much. Keep training, and it will get easier. Burning your is part of the training. Once you master this stage, you won't burn yourself. Naruto told her what she needed to hear, not exactly what she wanted to hear. Kaneko looked at the ball, before she looked at Naruto. So the only reason that I have been failing was because I stopped when it hurt? Kaneko asked Naruto with a dull tone. She could have gotten this day one, and she had been failing because of her own pain. Yep, this is hard, because it teaches you how to make your chakra denser and pack more force into it. When you reach the point that it hurts, keep going. The second I realized that, I mastered this. Naruto told Kaneko as well. Of course, he lacked some concentration needed, so he needed to master that as well. Kaneko didn't have the same issue as him. Her issue was that she stopped when it started to hurt her. Kaneko looked at the rubber ball, before she looked at Naruto. I suck, don't I? Kaneko asked with a twitch of annoyance. She had assumed that when it started to hurt, she was supposed to stop doing it. It was against the nature of animals to do things that hurt them. Her instincts told her to stop, heck, not even that. People didn't like pain, most people didn't like pain. They didn't like it, so they stopped whatever they were doing that caused them pain. No more than I did. Anyway, you still are doing really good now, try again, but this time push yourself to the absolute limit of your pain tolerance. Oh, and warning to the wise, hold the rubber ball to the ground. You won't be able to control the power so well, Naruto told her with a knowing look. The power that was first achieved when you popped the rubber ball was like having a hand grenade go off in your hand. It could blow you back, and rip the ground to shreds. Oh, okay? Kaneko said as she held the ball to the ground, and she spread her legs and bent over so that she could grab it with both hands. Kaneko gripped the ball, before she loosened her grip. Kaneko lifted her hand before she started to move her hand over the ball many times over as she put her swirling chakra inside of it. Kaneko increased the density, and her hair started to get pushed up by the force she was exerting with her chakra. Naruto got up and walked behind Kaneko, and it wasn't so that he could see her panties, it was because he knew what was about to happen next. Kaneko continued to build up her chakra, to the point that visible burns were appearing on her hands. Kaneko gasped in pain, and the rubber ball started to bulge in a ton of spots at once. It wasn't popping though, and she reached the limit that she normally stopped at. Kaneko glanced back at Naruto, who nodded at her. "Keep going, work through the pain," Naruto told her, and in a split second, she regained her fighting spirit for learning. "Ayayawaya!" Kaneko screamed as she started to move her hands faster, and she continued to push dense chakra from her hands into the sphere. Kaneko's chakra was flaring, creating a tiny blue aura around her. Turns out, her chakra was actually blue, unlike Naruto's own yellow chakra. Kaneko did not stop for even a moment as she pushed her limits, broke them, and continued to go. The burns on her hands were getting serious, and the skin was peeling back in some spots, and her blood started to drip onto the ground. She doesn't train tomorrow either, end of story. Naruto thought to himself. She was training, he wasn't going to heal all of her injuries. She would need to recover from this on her own, though Sage Mountain would help her out. The natural energy was super thick, and those connected to nature found their injuries healing faster. A good bath would help her out as well. Naruto took a stance, and he prepared for what was about to happen. Naruto looked at Kaneko, and judged her weight to 68 pounds. The force of the explosion, combined with the position she was standing at, and her weight, would put her Naruto moved a few meters back. He had weighed a bit more than Kaneko when he learned this, and he had been sent flying as well. This was going to be awesome. "I'm doing it!" Kaneko shouted out as the ball started to expand to near popping size, and it was then that Kaneko realized something, just as her hand moved in almost slow motion to deliver the last piece of chakra. This was a lot of chakra she was putting into this ball, and a lot of contained chakra was about to come bursting out of this in one swift explosion. Oh sure, Kaneko didn't get to finish that remark. Boom. Kaneko was sent flying when the rubber ball exploded, and Naruto lifted his hand up into the air. Kaneko was flying through the air, and he caught her. Her body wrapped around his arm, and he deadpanned when he noticed something. Her clothes were completely and utterly destroyed, having been blown right off by the explosion. "Your clothes, they get destroyed a lot, don't they?" Naruto asked her, and he noticed that she had been knocked out by the explosion. Naruto gave a small chuckle, before he took his own jacket off and wrapped it around her body. She had knocked herself out, and she was nearly out of chakra. "I'll replace them for you," Naruto said as he started to walk with Kaneko in his arms. Well, she was technically ready for the third stage, and then began the senjutsu training itself, the hardest part of this. Naruto went into the temple, and he placed Kaneko on her bed mat, before he took his jacket off of her, and placed a blanket on her instead. The jacket was his, and while he was okay with her wearing it, he didn't want her to rip it in her sleep. Naruto got up, and he was about to walk away, before Kaneko groaned. "Okay, only lightly knocked out." "I did it," Kaneko said first thing when she woke up, and Naruto nodded. "That she did?" "Yep, and tomorrow you will get your reward. Anything you want?" Naruto asked her, since she deserved a reward after how hard she had been working. Kaneko thought about it, and she sat up. She didn't seem to notice that she was naked, and when she did notice, all she did was put her hand over her chest. Well, glad to know she trusts me. Enough to be fine being naked, or she just isn't shy about her body. Naruto thought with a light grin. She was insecure, but shy she was not. "I want to be pampered," Kaneko said to Naruto, and smiled at her. "That doesn't tell me what you actually want," Naruto thought, before he sighed, and rubbed the back of his head. "Okay, so what does that mean?" Naruto asked her, and Kaneko smiled. "Real food, and I want to sit in your lap, and I want you to pet me. I also want you to wash my back, my hands," Kaneko said as she showed her damaged hands. She could not really wash herself well with her hands like this. If she didn't know better, and she did, she would have assumed that Naruto let her hands be damaged just so that he could touch her body. Of course, she did know better. This was a step of Rasengan training, to which she knew that Naruto had gone through. She was sure that Naruto's hands would burn as well, but unlike her, he had a freaky healing factor that let him regenerate in minutes from burns. He was a battle pervert. He used perverted stuff for the point of surprising his enemies. Also, he was Naruto, and he didn't need to resort to tricks to get some. If Naruto wanted to, He could go up to pretty much any Yukai female and just ask them for sex. He didn't need to trick her, just to touch her. That thought is kind of depressing. He can literally have anyone in the underworld as well. Devils and fallen angels are attracted to power, and he has just that. Even Yukai women are attracted to it. Why would he settle for me? Kaneko thought as her smile slipped into a sad frown. He could literally have somebody way more mature than she was, and he would barely have to try. Naruto noticed her look, before he pat her on the head. Insecurities were not easy things to get over, and Kaneko had apparently been surrounded by women much more mature than her. She didn't realize her own charm for the most part. Kaneko looked up at Naruto, and she smiled when he smiled at her. He would help her work through these issues. These bandages are proof of your hard work, they are also proof you can't use your hands today. Naruto joked around with Kaneko as he wrapped up her burned hands. He put some ointment on them, the same ointment that his ex-wife Hinata had used to make. It would accelerate the healing process, so that by the end of the day Kaneko's burns would be healed over. She could use her hands, but it wasn't suggested that she do that. She didn't have nearly as good recovery as he did. Sometimes he forgot that other people didn't have his stamina or healing factor. I'm hungry, Kaneko told Naruto when her stomach growled loudly at both of them. Naruto laughed a little. They were already in the kitchen, and Naruto's clones were making enough ramen to feed them, mostly Naruto. The smell of ramen cooking was intoxicating to Kaneko at the moment. Seriously, she hated eating bugs so much even if she acquired a taste for it enough that she stopped throwing up when she ate it. Patience, what was one of the things you learned climbing the mountain? Naruto asked Kaneko, and she crossed her arms. Patience is key, Kaneko told him, and he could see her pout. She was kind of sick of hearing about patience from an impatient person. Naruto could be patient when he wanted to be, but he didn't actually have to be patient either. He had gotten to the ripe old age of how old are you, master? Kaneko asked Naruto, who blinked a few times. I was around before devils came into existence, Naruto told Kaneko with a smug tone, and Kaneko's eyes widened at that for a moment. He was a walking history book. What was early human history like? Kaneko asked Naruto, since he had to have been alive during the Stone Age. He had to have been. Well, humans used to be more advanced than they were today. Then the continent split up and a lot of technology was lost. In my time, all of the continents used to be one supercontinent, so I would hazard a guess I'm a few thousand years old, Naruto said with a thoughtful look on his face. He was one of the oldest things on this entire planet. He remembered the supercontinent, the elemental nations. Though now it was referred to by a different name, a wrong name. Did you see dinosaurs? Kaneko asked Naruto with eyes showing excitement. She really wanted to know, and Naruto nodded his head. Humans and dinosaurs existed together, though humans didn't become fossils. They simply turned into dust, and they hid in caves when the huge extinction happened. Naruto would have stopped it, but he was currently on the island till when that happened. The island turtle's body was not completely organic, making it semi-immortal. So long as it didn't suffer from being attacked, it would live forever. Yeah, those were genetic experiments by a scientist named Orochimaru. He is still alive somewhere in the world. He achieved immortality differently though, Naruto told Kaneko, and she was completely enthralled with his story. Kaneko's eyes widened when she realized that Naruto didn't know he was a few 100 million years old, not just a few thousand. Did Naruto really think he was only a few thousand years old? There was a silence for a while, before Kaneko asked a question that had been on her mind for a while. Why do we have the risk for going mad with power but you don't? Kaneko asked about senjutsu, and it took Naruto a moment to understand that was what she was asking about. Naruto thought about the answer for a moment. Well, imagine if I stole your food and or asked you for it. Which would you get mad at? Naruto asked her, and Kaneko didn't even need a moment to answer. If you stole it, Kaneko answered, and Naruto nodded to her. Senjutsu's main point is becoming one with nature. There was a clan of people in my time, they had the ability to draw in natural energy while moving, and turn it into senjutsu chakra, but it drove them mad with power, and caused them to go on killing sprees. Yet, when I use it, I've never felt that malice ever. Naruto told her, and Kaneko's eyes widened. She didn't get it, but she was seeing where the similarities were. Kuroka had gone mad with power, and gone on a killing spree when using senjutsu. Were they the same as that clan? Are the Nikash? Kaneko didn't get to ask all the way. No, you aren't related. When you become one with nature, then nature will give you as much power as you need. If you forcefully pull from nature, it gets pissed at you. I become one with nature, your sister took from nature, she moved. Naruto told Kaneko, who still didn't get it. How was moving bad? She was pretty sure that you had to move to fight, and if you couldn't move in a fight you lost. Why is that bad? Kaneko asked, and Naruto started to pat her on the head. Silly question. You aren't supposed to move when you collect natural energy, and turn it into senjutsu chakra. What did I tell you about the clan? Naruto asked Kaneko, giving her a small quiz. They moved and did it, and they went on rampages? Kaneko questioning said, wondering how it fit. The gears in her head were spinning, trying to figure it out, and it was becoming more clear to her. What was the link between them going on rampages, and Kuroka going on a rampage? She didn't truly understand it, and then it came to her. They moved! Kaneko almost shouted. Yep. Naruto answered, and Kaneko furrowed her brow. What is so bad about moving around? What is the difference between moving and not moving? Kaneko asked, with Naruto placed his hand on her forehead, ruffling her hair. She nearly mewed into his hand, but her shock over what he was saying was too great. Naruto smiled down at her, and a bowl of ramen was placed in front of them by a clone. The difference is movement if you are being literal. You can't control senjutsu, you can master it, but you cannot force it, Kaneko. To force it is to anger nature. Naruto told her, and she turned a little pink when she saw a smile he was sending her. He was giving wise advice, and he had noticed the pattern long ago. You could not move when you entered sage mode. Naruto had attempted it, and he had succeeded, but it had been too hard for him to maintain a balance. Pa had been unable to keep up with Naruto, so they had to quit the training and gathering senjutsu chakra while moving. That was when Naruto invented the clone method, while Kaneko didn't have that option here. So my sister did what she did because she moved when she used senjutsu? Kaneko asked, with Naruto picking her up and placing her in his lap. He grabbed chopsticks, and started to move them to her lips with ramen on it. Kaneko licked her lips, before she reached out with her face and met the ramen halfway. Naruto used his other hand to rub the top of her head, and she was in utter bliss. Head rubs and she was eating people food again. You are well on your way. I was thinking of taking you to the Falls of Truth tomorrow, Naruto told Kaneko, and he grinned a little. At first, Naruto had thought that only Jinchuriki like himself could use that, but he later learned that anyone could use it. Might Guy had used it, but before his true self could form in his mind, Kisame had interrupted him. Turns out, so long as you had a true self, you could use the falls. Naruto had started to use it as a senjutsu training tool, that way those who learned senjutsu knew themselves fully, and would become mentally and emotionally stronger. People these days fell to their baser desires much easier than people in his time, and Kaneko was not much different. Yuh. Kaneko moaned as she ignored everything Naruto was saying, in favor of eating and having her head rubbed. Great, she is getting turned on, Naruto thought with a twitch, and he could feel a little moistness against his lap. He didn't make her get up though, because she couldn't help it right now. People didn't know this, but there were 10 smells that humans could actually smell, but they didn't know it. He wasn't going to list them all, but he could smell the fact that he and Kaneko would produce a healthy baby if they made it. He could also smell a sexual affinity, and the fact that Kaneko was ovulating at the moment. This was nothing to do with him having a strong nose, this was all him having so many years of experience with his nose. So good. Kaneko moaned as she swallowed the ramen, and Naruto smiled and rubbed her head a little harder. She was enjoying herself, no reason to make her stop. Naruto raised the bowl to her lips, before she drank from it. Another clone came up and put a bowl in front of them again, but this time the clone popped. This tastes so good, Kaneko said as she put her head on the table. Naruto started to feed himself, since Kaneko's stomach couldn't hold more than a single bowl. You remind me a bit of your mother, you know. You look just like your mom when she was your age, Naruto told Kaneko, who looked up at him with surprise. You knew my mom? Kaneko asked, and Naruto nodded his head. She had come for senjutsu training as well. She failed the training, and I had to send her away, but she was a good woman. You know, she was about 17 when she got here. She was a bit on the short side, about 5 feet tall, and she was petite. I think your sister got her bust size from your father's side of the family, his mother that is, Naruto told Kaneko, who looked at Naruto in surprise. She had no clue that her mother had failed the senjutsu training, and needed to be kicked out of the training completely. It is that hard? Kaneko asked with surprise, and Naruto nodded. Rarely does anyone ever completely pass, only a few people have ever actually fully mastered it. Of course, they never left without learning something. Even if you don't succeed, you learned so much, was it worth it? Naruto asked her, and she nodded her head. She had learned so much just from the journey, and she could control her chakra so much better now. She could condense it, and she controlled the shape much better. She could make it spiral, and she could make it super dense. The power of her attacks would increase just from increasing the density. "I'm going to make you proud, I will not fail," Kaneko assured Naruto, and she turned to her side. She curled her legs up, and put her feet on his thighs. She rested her head against his chest, and just listened to his heart beating. Naruto placed an arm around her legs and back, before he stood up. "You got ramen all over you. Want me to wash your back for you?" Naruto asked her, and she raised her hands up, and showed him how bandaged they are. "I would like that," Kaneko said with a small smile, and her smile was almost innocent. Almost, if Naruto weren't able to see the familiar look of attempted seduction in her eyes. She was not fooling him, he had seen that look before. He knew that women in this era were much more openly sexual than those of his time. In his time, most women were rather reserved sexually, only a few were outright sexual. Of course, it was also a time period when you could go to a brothel at age 12 and fuck your brains out with a slut if you wanted to. It was also a time when you could take a seduction mission if you wanted to get laid bad enough, so in his time, while people were more reserved, they also had an easier time actually getting laid. Even then, that was only a small percent of the women that took those missions, or even had sex at a young age. He knew for a fact his generation all waited until marriage, while he and Hinata didn't wait until marriage. They had gotten married mere months after they started dating, and Boruto was born within less than a year after they got married. Let's just say, they were very active sexually even before their marriage. Hinata was a tiger in the sack. Her Byakugan could see into his body, and see all of the places that would feel best. She knew just where to kiss, and lick and suck to feel best. There was a reason that they had 2 kids, while everyone else had 1. It had nothing, okay not totally nothing, to do with the fact he himself was well endowed. His wife was very good at what she did. Those were the days. Naruto muttered to himself, and Kaneko could smell that he was a little aroused at the moment, though it didn't seem to have anything to do with her. "What are you thinking about?" Kaneko asked bluntly, and Naruto turned a little pink in the cheeks at being caught. Sorry, got caught up in old memories," Naruto said with a slight grin on his face. He wasn't one to be left behind by his wife. He had used several techniques in bed as well. Shadow clones so that he could massage Hinata's body while doing her, and he had those clones turn invisible with the transparent escape technique, so it was like they were alone. Senjutsu so that he could expand the aura around his manhood, and make his impressive girth spread her even more from the inside, and make it move around. First stage Rasengan to stimulate her clit, and without harming her. Very weak spirals that he used his balancing to achieve amazing sex positions, Senjutsu training for the win. Sexy Jutsu to give Hinata a little girl-on-girl action every once in a while. Shadow Clone Jutsu for a threesome. Transformation Jutsu, where they turned into younger versions of themselves for sex. One of his favorites, though, was the 1000 Years of Death, no explanation needed. It was always the quiet ones that were the kinkiest during sex, and damn was Hinata as kinky as she was quiet. "Master?" Kaneko questioned when she saw him stare off into the sky with a pleasant smile on his face. She closed her eyes after a moment though, and she placed her head against his chest. She was going to enjoy the moment. 5 beings stood together, and in front of those 5 beings was a tall man wearing silver and black armor with a vile aura about him. His hair was silver, and his eyes were blue. He was rather tall, and he seemed young for his age. The man had a sneer on his face as he held a cup in his hand, and behind him was a frail-looking girl on the ground, unconscious at the moment. He had a small goatee, and his eyes were filled with confidence at the moment as he stared at the small the army that he had summoned. He had heard a rumor amongst yokai that the Lord Seventh had finally found another student in the form of a devil from the peerage of the Gremry family's young Rias. He didn't know who this Lord Seventh was, but when asked about it, even Ophis seemed unwilling to challenge him. So, he had to speed up his plans a little, as in months ahead. Anyone that Ophis of all people feared to take on was somebody he needed to be serious about as well. A man that came from before the time of sacred gears would be immune to his powers. A guy that mad gods pale in comparison, and even super devils quake in fear. His name was Rizavim Levon Lucifer, and he was no fool. He knew that if this Lord Seventh became involved in the coming conflicts, that he would more than likely be able to stop it all with no effort. A man stronger than Ophis to the point she wouldn't even challenge him, was a person that made Trihexa look like a minor annoyance, and reviving Trihexa when there was a person alive that could easily beat it was not smart. So, he tracked down Valerie Teeps and took a copy of the Sephiroth Grawl from her. With it, he touched the principles of life and revived what history considered as 5 of the strongest beings to ever exist whose souls were corrupt by anger, revenge, or a thirst for battle. He couldn't have them running off on their own and ruining his plans. Indra Otsutsuki, a younger man who had long dark brown hair, and he had a rather handsome face. He wore a white robe over his body, much like all of the people summoned. He had red eyes with 3 black tomo around the pupils. He had rounded eyebrows, and he had long sideburns that were tied up. Rizavim had summoned him as cannon fodder for Lord 7, seeing as he was the weakest of the group summoned. He had power barely comparable to the second lowest power of the group. Madara Uchiha, a man in his later 20s with long white hair and a horned forehead guard. His skin was gray, and his eyes were 2 purple eyes that consisted of many rings. He wore a black bodysuit, and over that he had on a white robe with magatama around the collar of it. He had 9 floating balls behind his back, and in his hand was a black staff with a mostly completed moon symbol on it. He was well above Indra in power, but nowhere close to the next power. Kinshiki Otsutsuki, a tall man standing at 7 feet 6 inches in height, with a large body that was extremely muscular. His hands alone could hit entire human torsos inside of them. He wore a white robe with gray armor above it, and gray pants. His hair was light blue, and led into a beard and mustache. He had a single white horn on the left side of his head, and white eyes, pure white eyes, though he wasn't blind. He was stronger than Madara, but weaker than the next person in the group. Kagaya Otsutsuki, a tall woman standing over 6 feet tall, with rabbit-like bone horns sticking out of her head. She had a red eye in the middle of her forehead, looking like Madara's eyes but with tomo around the rings, and she had the same white eyes as Kinshiki. She had light gray skin and long white hair. She wore a ceremonial white robe that covered most of her body, but her hands came out of the long sleeves and showed long black clawed nails. She was infinitely more powerful even the strongest person that Rizavim had sensed before today, and she had a cold look in her eyes. Finally, the strongest of the group. Mamashiki Otsutsuki, a giant like Kinshiki. He had burning red skin, with white markings under his black and white eyes. He had a purple eye like Madara's in the middle of his forehead, and he had a slightly thinner structure compared to Kinshiki. He had white spiked back hair, and large rabbit horns that curved forward. His face was narrow, and he had fangs pointing up. He wore a white robe as well, and he had the same purple eyes on the palms of his hands. The man was several times more powerful than Kagaya even, seeming to have not only her power level, but he was strong enough that it was like adding both Kagaya and Kinshiki together to reach half of his power. Living? Madara thought as he looked at himself in his Ten-Tails Jinchuriki form, though he was not the Jinchuriki at the moment. No, he was the Jinchuriki, but at the same time, he wasn't the true Jinchuriki. Mamashiki-sama, I see you attained power. Kinshiki praised Mamashiki, who looked around with narrowed eyes. Grandmother Kagaya. Indra thought with surprise as his eyes shifted into the Magnikyo Sharingan form. Spirals appeared in his eyes instead of tomo. He had heard stories of her power before now. You, the one who revived us, you better have a reason for this, before I slay you, Kagaya said as a bone spike appeared out of her palm and she pointed it at Rizavim, who bowed. Oh Lady Kagaya, I have revived you all for a very specific reason. I wish to cause chaos, and to give you each a shot at revenge against the Lord 7th who has defeated each of you. I, Rizavim, hope you will join forces with me, Rizavim said, and Madara and Kagaya seemed confused at who that was. Indra knew the answer simply because he had seen the world through the eyes of his chakra reincarnation Sasuke Uchiha before. He knew that the Asura was the 7th Hokage, Naruto Uzumaki, and he knew that the Lord 7th had defeated his own reincarnation. An Asura defeating an Indra, it will not be allowed to happen again, Indra thought as he glared at nothing. Uzumaki Naruto Mamashiki growled under his breath, and it was heard by Kagaya, who sensed the power of Mamashiki. To defeat this man, Naruto must have become even stronger than when he took part in the battle that sealed her. She killed herself in the seal in the hopes that somebody would be foolish enough to bring her back to life. It had worked, somebody had been dumb enough to bring her back. But it would appear that somebody existed that could kill her now, several people if she counted Mamashiki with Naruto. Ha 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 ha. I seek no revenge against Naruto, foolish weakling, Madara assured the weaker being standing in front of him. He had no issue with Naruto, nor did he seek revenge. If Naruto was stronger than the other people in the group, then Naruto had become powerful enough to defeat him without having to try too hard. Madara thought about it for a second. That would mean that Naruto had grown a lot stronger. With that thought, Madara gained a grin worthy of his thirst for strong opponents. I seek no revenge, but I do wish for a rematch and to see the fight to the end. You have my cooperation, weakling, Madara spoke, sure that this person wouldn't be able to stand in the way of his goal. I thank you for your cooperation, and the rest of you? Rizavim asked with a forced pleasant smile at being referred to as weakling in twice. I will help, so long as the Azura reincarnation dies. Indra spoke with crossed arms, with Rise of him smiling widely at this answer as well. Momoshiki-sama, you fell in battle to Uzumaki Naruto? Kinshiki asked Momoshiki, who growled deeper than before. He flexed his power, and the entire world started to shake under his might. He had been defeated by Naruto twice, technically 3 times, in their battle. First in his base form, and then a second time in his current form, and finally it had been Naruto's power, wielded by his son, that defeated a 3rd time. Naruto's raw chakra was stronger than what Momoshiki knew he had. He held back his ninjutsu against me, he held back, and this time I will fight him, and make him suffer for defying a god's will. Momoshiki spoke with hate in his voice. Naruto had held back all of his ninjutsu, and fought him with only taijutsu. That was why Naruto had won, because he hadn't given Momoshiki more power to use. He had gotten lucky. If he had used any ninjutsu, then Momoshiki knew he could have fought more evenly. He had sensed other abilities related to ninjutsu in Naruto, and if he could get Naruto to use those abilities, then he could absorb them and use them against Naruto, but with more power. Well, this is your chance to fight him again, is it not? If you were to join me, I can assure you that you will have that chance. Rise of him pointed out to Momoshiki, who stared into Rise of him's very soul, causing the man to visibly recoil from the hard stare. Momoshiki was an intimidating person. This man has no chakra, and I barely sense chakra around the planet.